I had to work there for 9 months. They were feeding us 50 kernels of corns per meal, and a salty water and some leftover cabbage as a soup. And we're forced to work up to 12 hours every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our good friends at Hydro Rower. This holiday season, there's only one fitness gift that should be on your list. It's not a treadmill, it's not an elliptical, and it's not a bike. Those don't work your upper body or your core. So if you want to give the gift of an immersive full body workout, all from the comfort of your home, you need the Hydro Rower. Hydro is your go-to for the ultimate full body workout. It's designed by Rower, so you know it's going to get the job done all in just about 20 minutes. No matter your starting point or your goal, whether you're training for a marathon or just training for life in general, Hydro meets you where you are. Hydro is a low impact, which means there's a minimal risk of injury. And Hydro also combines strength and cardio to give you an amazing workout. It's so hard, me being a dad of two, to find that time to get out. You already got work. You're tired when you come home. But if you have the Hydro sitting in your house, you have no more excuses. We have the new year coming up and everybody wants to have those resolutions. It'll be a lot nicer if you had Hydro showing up at your door, because you can give the gift of a full body workout all from the comfort of your own home. You can head over to hydro.com, use the promo code Wonton to save up to $800 off your Hydro Pro rower. That's HYDROW.com, code Wonton to save up to $800, which is crazy. Hydro.com, code Wonton. All right, now let's get into the actual episode, which today on Drop a Pin, we're going to talk about North Korea, and we're going to do it right now.
Hey, how are you? Welcome back to Drop a Pin. Today we have the heaviest episode yet, I would say, because our guest is a man who escaped North Korea twice. And it is quite a fascinating interview, but it also gets pretty dark at times.
And I almost teared up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He starts talking about all kinds of stuff, and it made me a little bit emotional. I held on, but a little emotional.
I will say, though, he seems like a very happy guy now, despite everything he went through.
Yeah. I mean, how could you not be?
Yeah, true. But some people would just be so scarred from those experiences that they would still have a lot of darkness in them.
Yeah, almost like a 1,000-yard stare.
Yeah, that was not the case with him. He's, I don't know. He has a very bright, happy presence, despite talking about some really dark times in his life. So without further ado, let's get into the interview.
All right, now on Drop a Pin, we are privileged to have Charles Ryu on the show. I came across Charles on Instagram, and I saw one of his videos where you were standing out in front of a crowd or in front of a building, and you said, "Ask a North Korean." And I was immediately hooked in, and I think I watched every single video on your page. So, Charles, thanks so much for joining us.
No problem. It's my honor, and thank you so much for having me on the show.
The Fresh Prince of Pyongyang is what you go by, right?
That's right. Fresh Prince of Pyongyang. Yeah, so when I was in North Korea, so first of all, I escaped North Korea twice. First time when I was 14, and second time when I was 16 and a half. And I came to America back in 2012. And a lot of people actually don't believe that I, am from North Korea because I speak, without any accent. But I guess watching those Family Guy actually paid off. So I was born and raised in North Korea. And fortunately and unfortunately, my dad abandons me and my mother and left to China when I was 5. And he never came back. And my mom passed away from starvation when I was 11 in North Korea. And ever since, my life has been, just traveling, town to town and trying to survive and day-to-day life. It's figuring out what I'm going to eat next. And I ended up living with my aunt. I'm not sure if you guys know the Chosen Reservoir.
I do.
It was so my hometown is actually Changjin. So that's the city infamous for that Chosen Reservoir battle. So yeah, when I was like a younger kid, I would see like this white Benz with a triangle yellow flag. That is like coming in and collecting the remains of the American soldiers. And in school, we're taught that like every time we see like a fancy car, right, on the street, because there is no fancy cars where I'm from, like Changjin, right? So if I were to see a fancy car, you're supposed to drop down 90 degrees and you should bow, right? But for this car, white Benz with a yellow flag, yellow triangle flag, do not vow because that's Americans. And we hate Americans.
Huh. And what were the Americans doing there? They were collecting dead bodies from the war?
That's right. Yeah, remains of the soldiers. Yeah, because there were a lot of yeah. It's like as a kid, like I would see like helmets, like the I guess like the echoes of the Korean War. Yeah, I would see like bullet casings and like unexploded grenades.
Yeah,
And
for people that
sometimes
don't know, that was one of the most deadly spots to be. The Chosin Reservoir like is legendary amongst Marines. In fact, I'm a Marine. I actually have somebody tattooed from that battle of the Chosin Reservoir, Trusty
Wow.
Puller, on my arm. So it definitely wasn't warm where you grew up either.
No, it was not. It was not. It was not. It was really cold. One time, like it was May, and we had snow like up until like all the way up to the door, so we could not open the door. And we didn't have a father, we didn't have a man in the house, so somebody from our neighborhood had to come to our house and rescue us.
You mentioned that your father defected to China. Were you and your mother punished for that? Because I heard that's
yeah.
something they do in North Korea to keep people from leaving. Because they're like, if you leave, we're just going to make your family pay the consequences.
That's right. That's right. And here's about like a little bit of background of my family story. So my grandfather was a Chinese man. So he came to North Korea to aid the North Korean regime during the 1953 Korean War. And he ended up not returning to China, and he met my grandmother. So my father is half Chinese because he was born and raised in North Korea. But when he was, I think, approximately 30, I would say, when he was 30, North Korean regime actually gave him this privilege of like, okay, so since your father fought for us during the war, we can give you a Chinese citizenship or North Korean citizenship and Chinese green card so that you can live in North Korea, but you can always go back to China whenever you want. Yeah, so that's why my father is Chinese, which makes me technically 25% Chinese. But later in the story, I'll tell you, but yeah, it didn't work out that way. So and going back to your question of families being punished, yes, that is true. And I'm thankful that my mom passed away and my dad is Chinese. And if my parents or if my mom was still alive in North Korea, she will be persecuted from the North Korean regime. But because I don't have a tie back in North Korea, I can share my story. And that's also one thing really sad about like North Korean defector stories is that a lot of them have amazing stories, but they can't really share it because if they come on this kind of platforms like this, North Korean regime will see it and like, oh, there he is. I know where you live, and I know where your family live. So yeah, which like coming to America, going to South Korea, right? That's bad, like for the family back in North Korea, right? But coming to America, that's even worse because North Korea considers like America as the number one enemy state, right? So, yeah, I'm thankful that I don't have family.
Right after your father went to China, what was your life there like as a child in North Korea without a dad and just with your mother?
Yeah, good question. So, before my dad abandoned us, he borrowed a bunch of money from the neighborhood, um, and he bought opium, and he went to China to sell. So it's like a drug, like a mule or a drug like smuggler. And he got captured by Chinese government, and he was thrown into a prison. And he was supposed to come back like 3 months, 6 months later, however the timeline was, but nobody showed up. Like my dad didn't come back, and therefore people who my dad owes money to would come to our house like every day and like beat up my mom and like asking where my dad is, like is he gonna come back? And eventually they came to our house and took our food, our like plates, like little utilities, like kitchen utilities, blankets, like anything that could actually make money. So that's why and eventually they took our house too. And we were forced to live with my grandmother, my maternal side of the grandmother. Yeah, so I was enrolled in school in North Korea at the time. I was like earliest memory that I have is like 7. Yeah, I don't have any more than that, like 7. And I was enrolled in school and coming back home, like I'm always like tense, like, oh, what if there's like random people at our home, like beating up my mom, and yeah, what would I like, what would I do? Yeah, those kind of memories. And eventually, so 11, after my mom's passing, my maternal side of the grandmother sent me to my aunt's house. So my aunt's house in Sariwon. It's a city in North Korea. It's really close to the like South Korea. And the funny thing is that she used to force me to write a letter to my dad every single day. Like, oh yeah, I'm doing well, because my aunt somehow knew where my dad lived, and hoping that he would, help her financially. And eventually my dad did return a letter to us, to me and to my aunt, basically saying, oh, thank you so much for taking care of Charles. It's amazing that, you can actually help him. But my aunt changed the content of the letter. So she kept the envelope, but she changed the letterhead and said, oh yeah, if you come to China, I will help you, kind of way. So she made it seem to be like an official invitation to China. Because as you may know, North Korean people are not allowed to leave the country.
Right.
Like there are, your checkpoints on, all major roads, and you will have to have a traveling document to even move, town to town. And if you don't have a traveling document and you're trying to go to the city, you will be thrown into like 6 months of forced re-educational camp, like a forced labored re-educational camp. And my aunt wanted to get passport because like she's now got the official invitation. By the way, so please do stop me at any point, because I will just go on and on and on about my story.
No, it's fascinating.
So
it's your story
please
to tell. We'll
feel
listen.
free to stop me and just ask me any questions that you may have. Yeah. Okay, perfect.
Okay.
So my aunt needed money to bribe the regime to actually get passport and expedite the process. And well, where can she get money? Because she's broke, and in North Korea, like doctors and farmers and and the janitors make all the same money, right? Because it's socialism.
Mm-hmm.
And one great idea that she came up with is like, oh, I'm gonna blackmail Charles's father, and she writes a letter to my dad in China. If you don't send money to me, I will kill your child and sell him as a meat on the black market. And then and then she gave that letter because she can't send it officially through like the official channels. So she hired a Chinese resident in North Korea, she found him and gave him that letter and dropped it off to my dad. And after my dad seeing that letter, it's like, what the hell? So he sent my half brother when I was 14 to rescue me from my aunt's house, and my half brother brought me to his house, and I lived there for a while. And then when I was 14, my half brother helped me to escape North Korea. So from Suncheon, where I lived, we took a train to Haesan, which is the border town, and he found some smugglers, and the smuggler was able to, I guess, like bribe the guard and oh yeah, during this time, a little kid is gonna go to China, and he's gonna bring us money because like at the time there was a lot of like a illegal trade that were happening between China and North Korea. So a North Korean person would ask a Chinese broker, and hey, can you buy me these stuff, and I'll give you the money, and etc. So I guess my broker like bribed the guard, and then he told me, yeah, so you can just on a day bright like broad daylight, he told me, yeah, you can just like go into the river, just pretend that you're taking a bath, and then when you're ready, just go to your dad, because your dad's gonna be on the other side of North Korea.
So you swam across the river?
Yes, sir. So yeah, I was 14. I went into the river, and I pretended taking a bath. And I mean, there's a lot of people on the river, because that river, the Yalu River, has been used as a source of like water for many years for North Koreans, because North Korea doesn't have a running water. So we like even like winter, like people have to come out and break the ice and get the water. Yeah, and my half brother managed or arranged everything, and my dad was on the other side with a taxi cab, and he was waiting for me. And I swam across, and I went to my dad, and I would have imagined, like, I haven't seen him in 10 years, right? And I would have imagined like this kind of like heartfelt, like warming reunion between the long lost father and the son. The first thing that he says, like, get your clothes back on. We gotta get the hell out of here. It's like, hurry.
You're telling the story so nonchalantly, but you must have been terrified. Were you scared out of your mind at the time?
So first time I wasn't scared, because like I know, yeah, like my half brother is in the other side. Like it's all arranged, and at least that's what I know. And all you need to do is just go to your father. Right? You're not betraying your country. You're not doing anything illegal. You're as a child, you just want to go see your dad. Like that's what I'm thinking. So it wasn't scary. It was just more of like, yeah, I'm taking a bath and I'm just swimming across, the Yalu River, the international border, and I'm gonna see my dad. But I'll get into the story later. But second time, yeah, I was terrified. And also I've been sharing my story, decent number of times, and
Right.
It kind of helped me to overcome the fear of I guess like revisiting my old memories.
Yeah. Well, let's get into why there even had to be a second time, because right now it seems like you made it to China.
Right, yeah, so I made it to China. Life was just amazing, right? This North Korean kid, like seeing bananas on like cartoons and TVs, and don't know how to eat it. And my dad asked me like, okay, so what do you want to eat the most, right? And I told him, yeah, I want to eat banana, because I've seen it like so many times. And he hands me, so he buys a bunch of banana at the market, and he hands me one. And I took a bite out of it with the peels on, right? And it was just so bitter. And yeah, I wasn't sure why people would eat it, and I couldn't process. Yeah, and it was free. I mean, China, depending on who you ask, like, oh yeah, China is free, and some people say China is communist country, and I say that too. China is communist country, but at least coming from North Korea, like you could like watch foreign medias, right? Like in North Korea, you're not allowed to watch foreign dramas, and you don't have like freedom of speech. And as a kid coming to China, there is like everything that you could eat, everything you've ever imagined is there, like PC bong, like a PC cafe, an arcade, and I've never seen like those kind of standing arcade like machines, and life is just great. It's amazing. Like, I was like, yeah, I could live here.
Yeah. I actually lived in China for almost 8 years in Shanghai.
Oh wow, yeah.
Tons of food everywhere. I know, like in the past, China had serious starvation problems.
Yeah.
But that is no longer the case. I think very few people in China these days go starving. Everywhere I went, even in the poorest communities I was at, there was still plenty to eat.
Yeah, I mean, the place that I came to, it's called Hunchun, so it's in the province of Jilin, and it's much closer to North Korea. But at least that place had plenty to eat and plenty to do. Just like it literally felt like jumping into a time machine and just fast forwarding 50 years into the future, because like there's cars everywhere. There are like stores, life was good, but unfortunately a Chinese citizen reported me to the authorities and we got caught. And my dad did try to convince the Chinese authorities of like, he's my son, but he has no proof, right? And especially when Chinese regime or Chinese government does not recognize North Korean defectors as economic migrants. So they have this friends treaty with North Korea that every North Korean defector will capture them and deport them back to North Korea. So when I was like 15 and a half or 15 years old, when I was 15 years old, I got captured and I got deported to North Korea. Of course, like I would go through this steps of like the taking photos, fingerprints, and asking the intense questioning of like, why did you come to China, and like what were your purpose. And eventually I stayed in the Chinese jail for 2 weeks, and after that I was deported back to North Korea, and I ended up in this interrogation place, and it was very scary. Because like I could hear, because like there was not enough like jail cell for the North Korean defectors, and I was minor, so they ended up putting me into like an interrogation office for 2 weeks, and every single day I could hear from the next door somebody screaming, "Oh my gosh, stop, like my leg is broken, like I'm bleeding, please help me." And yeah, it was terrifying. It was very difficult and it was very scary. And so my dad had a third wife. So he took it in, a North Korean defector woman, and he used to live with her. And all like three of us, because she had three daughters, and one of them was married to a Chinese guy. And then the two of them and my stepmom and me, all three of us got captured and we were deported back. And coming into the North Korean, like the secret police interrogation place, they didn't question me particularly a lot because, this mother actually took him in and he escaped with like his mom, right? Technically. But yeah, they were asking me also like, why did you escape North Korea? Like, what were your, what did you want to do? Like, what did you eat in China? Who did you meet? What kind of media have you seen? And like asking all of these detailed questions to make sure that I wasn't trying to escape to South Korea. And I told them like, yeah, I didn't try to escape to South Korea. Like the only reason why I escaped North Korea was to be with my father. And then I was in another process of going to my hometown, and they sent me to this North Korean defectors detention center that where like every North Korean defector goes to be sent to their hometowns. So so basically, when you come out, like when you get captured and come out to the border town, where it's like a Namyang, it's the border town that is in North Korea, and they don't just send you straight to your hometown to be judged. They actually send you to this North Korean defectors detention center first. And they go through more extensive like background researching and making sure that you are not trying to escape to South Korea. And I ended up there when I was 15, and I had to work there for 9 months. They were feeding us 50 kernels of corns per meal, and a salty water and some leftover cabbage as a soup. And we're forced to work up to 12 hours every day. And like each night, there was like like we would have to all stand up and we would have to recite the rules of the camp. And they will call out a random number at a time. And if you don't answer the rules correctly, then we were forced to stand all night, like reciting the rules over and over again. And for the first 3 months, like I was a minor, and first 3 months I worked really hard, and knowing that I'm a minor, so I will be released very soon. But months passed and I was not released. In fact, like I had to work even more. And eating 50 kernels of corn, as per meal for 3 months, that and at one point I was really, really hungry, and we're marching in our rows on a work site, and I saw a dry vomit on the road. And I was so hungry that I got on my hands and knees and began picking the rice out of the dry vomit. And everything that you see, like moving, even in a work site, is something you can eat. Like it's edible, like a live rat. Yeah, and at one point, I ended up picking out of like corn out of my own poop, because I was so hungry. And eventually, 9 months later, I was released because I could not even stand up or even lift my arm. I had lost so much weight that I was a worthless worker, and they sent me. They called my the police officers, which is Changjin officers, and they came to pick me up. And I ended up spending another 2 weeks in the jail, like extensively questioned, like why did you escape North Korea and things like that. And the reason why they're doing this is because they don't want you to share the informations you have observed in other countries like China, right? Because they want to make sure they're bubbling the North Korean people. And even after I was released from the jail, because I was minor, and for other refugees and defectors, they will be sent to 4 years of labor camp, even after serving that 9 months. But because I was a minor, I was released. But after I was released, there were guards following me around, like a secret police following me around 24/7, make sure that I didn't share the information that I perceived in China. And that was around 2010, and I ended up living with my half brother again. But in 2010, there was a North Korean currency devaluation that happened. It killed so many people, and Kim Jong Il wanted to do this because he couldn't control the black market anymore. So a North Korean people would do illegal trades and sell things in the black market. So it was becoming like America, becoming like capitalism, where money dictates everything. And Kim Jong Il thought, oh, this is getting out of hand. So only solution is for us to do currency devaluation. So 1,000 to 1. And a lot of people lost everything. Even my neighbor actually after that happened, after he lost everything, the entire family bought like they committed mass suicide. So they bought like a meat, and then they bought cyanide, and they ate the meat, and they committed suicide. And like any other people in North Korea, my half brother did lost everything too, so he could not support me anymore. And he was telling me, "Well, Charles, now you're 15 and you're your own man now, so you have to support yourself." So I ended up, working in a coal mine for about a year. And as you may know, coal mine, like we don't get paid money to work in coal mine. We get paid in rice. So 30 kilograms of rice per month. And it is very dangerous. I saw like falling rocks everywhere, people losing their limbs, and people even losing their lives when the cave-ins happens and the coal car tips over. And working there for a year, I couldn't do it anymore, and I couldn't forget about the freedom that I had in China and the food that I ate in China, and basically, I know the freedom that I had, and eventually, if I stay in North Korea and if I keep working in this coal mine, like I know I'm gonna be, end up dead. So I stole 5 flashlights at the coal mine, and I made my second escape. So once I stole the flashlights, I sold that flashlight to the black market, and I used that money to survive for 3 months. And one day I was, just like hanging out around the hillside in North Korea, and I saw a train that was stopped in the middle of nowhere, and that train said from Pyongyang to Hesan. So from the capital city of North Korea to the border town. And I mean, of course, there's extensive security guards, and guards with AK-47s guarding and make sure, like checking the train tickets and your identifications and traveling documents. But one thing about North Korea, there is no there's power outage that happens very often, and it even happens on the train as well. It even happens it happens everywhere, and when train stops, it's humid, it's hot, so people are all coming out of the train, just hanging out, and I joined the crowd, and when the power came back up, I joined the crowd and I tried to get on the train. And the guard asked me, "Oh, where's your papers and where's your ticket? Show me your ticket." And I said to the guard, "Well, my mother is on the train, and once I get on the train, I will bring her back to you, so you can see." And the guard nodded, and I headed up to the train. And then for the next 2 days, I basically had to play hide and seek with the guards, right? Because every time the train stops and moving again, they do the ticket checking, and the guards with the security guards with guns, they would go around and checking your ID, your train tickets, and the traveling documents. And I didn't have any of that. So oftentimes, I would have to hide in the train bathroom when the guard comes, or go outside from the train bathroom. I would have to climb out of the window and just hang in the train, or even go on the roof of the train to hide from the guards. And eventually, 2 days later, I came to the border town. So the train, the reason why it took 2 days is because the train in North Korea, they move very slow, and there are frequent power outages. So let's say we're moving for 5 hours and we're stopping for 10 or even a day. So if we were to drive a car from where I left to where I'm going, it probably would have taken about 5 to 6 hours, but it took 2 days. So yeah, so it's insane. It's crazy, but it happens very often in North Korea. And when I got to the border town, I went to the river, the Sam River again. This time, I'm all alone. Like previously, my half brother had arranged like brokers, and my daddy's on the other side with waiting for me with a taxi cab. But this time, it's by myself. And I went to the river around 3 p.m. And because I had a bucket as well, just to make sure, like, I was pretending that I was going to the river to do my daily chores. And I went down to the river, and I pretending I'm looking at the guards and looking at and looking around, and not every like not people, no one was watching. And when nobody was watching, I ditched the bucket, and I hid in the tall grass for many hours. Right, so I couldn't move. If I did, the grass is gonna be moving, and the guards would get suspicious, and they would come down. So I would have just hold until it got really really dark. And when it got really dark, and starting people were starting to there's nobody around, and the guards would very often he would just walk around with lights, trying to make sure nobody's nobody's on the premise. And when it was safe, I finally stepped into the water, and I started swimming. And in the middle of a river, I slipped on a rock, and I let out a gasp, right? And let out I was struggling basically. And then a flood of light came to me, and I heard a guard screaming at me from behind my back. He said, "야, 이 개새끼야, 안 들어와. 안 들어오면 쏜다." Meaning that he screamed at me that he would shoot me if I didn't turn back. But I mean, I knew that at this point, if I turn back, I'm gonna be sent to a labor camp where, I would be fed a little of, a 50 kernels of corn, the hard manual labor, the sleepless night that I spent, memorizing the rules, and I would basically die, starve to death in the labor camp.
Yeah, and I mean, you were treated horribly the first time you defected. You'd have to assume they would treat you even worse the second time.
That's right. And I'm almost becoming an age where I need to serve in the military, right? So I'm treated as an adult. So if I get captured, if I go back, I would die anyway. And if he's going to shoot me, just go ahead, shoot me. I don't care. And then I dug in, and then the current carried me a little further away from the guard. And then I popped back up, and I kept swimming, and then I came to China side. So that's how I escaped twice.
So once you cross the river, where do you go from there? Because you didn't have your dad in the taxi cab or anything like that. I imagine you really probably couldn't have even had that much of a plan.
I did not. Right.
You got on the bank. What was your next move?
Yeah, I did. I had zero plans. The only thing that I've thought about was going to China and digging into the trash can and finding something to eat. But yeah, once I escaped, once I came to China, I wanted to find my father again. But of course, it's a long road, and I was walking in the middle of nowhere for 3 days without any water or food. And eventually my shoe fell apart, and it got blisters because I was walking so much, and the blister popped and it was bleeding. And I couldn't walk anymore. And I collapsed in the middle of a road. And a Chinese man in China found me, collapsed in the middle of a road. And clearly he can tell that I'm a North Korean kid. And he was just stunned, and he was asking, "What are you doing here?" And I told him, I can speak broken Chinese. And I told him, I'm looking for my father in China, and he's Chinese. So this man took me to his house. And the next day, he connected me to a South Korean missionary who was able to get me on a bus to my dad's house. Because I told him, yeah, my dad lives here. And if you can get me to that city, yeah, my dad is going to help me.
Now, were you really worried about the same lady who ratted you out the first time, seeing you again, and then just going to the North Korean authorities?
The Chinese authorities, but we moved. Yeah, so they moved. Like my dad didn't live in the same neighborhood, so we moved. So after we got captured, deported back, my dad moved elsewhere. Um, yeah, and then I have a half sibling in China. I have a half sister in China, so I went to her house, and I knocked on the door, and she was freaking out. Right, like this, it's like 16 and a half, 17-year-old kid crossing the international border twice, risking his life, coming to China, and she was freaking out. Did you kill someone in North Korea? Did that why you had to escape, again and come to China? What did you do? She was more suspicious than being proud. And I told her and my dad, because they were asking the same questions, I told them like, no, I was hungry and I missed you. That's why I escaped North Korea again. And my dad whipped out a belt, and then he hit me and asked me, tell me the truth. What did you do in North Korea? So I was like, no, I didn't do anything wrong. And I was just hungry. And that's why I escaped North Korea again. And eventually my dad accepted me, and I lived with my dad for another 6 months. But living again in China, it felt like a prison, right? First time escaping to China, life was like, it was like heaven. Like all you can eat, everything is there, so fancy. My life couldn't be any better. But second time, the fear of getting captured again and deported back to North Korea, it drove me nuts. Like I couldn't go outside during the daytime. Like the only time that I would go out was really early in the morning or really late at night to avoid people. And living like that for 6 months, my dad eventually told me, you know what, you gotta get to South Korea. Like you don't have life in China, because if you get captured now, you're gonna be dead. You're gonna be killed. So he found me a broker that smuggles North Korean people out of China and through Southeast Asia. And eventually I came to Thailand. And in Thailand, I applied for a political asylum to United Nations, and I was still a minor at the time. So UNICEF took me in, and then UNICEF found me a resettlement agency in California. So from China to Southeast Asia, and from Southeast Asia to America. Yeah.
When you first got told that you were going to be going to America, what was your reaction?
I could not believe it. It was just crazy. Like I could not sleep, because here's the thing too, because my dad was Chinese, and also I had a half sister who went to South Korea first, right? I had a half sister who went to South Korea disguised as a North Korean defector. And I in the earlier I mentioned that my stepmother and my stepsister, all three of us got captured and deported back to North Korea, right? And those three people, so my stepmother and my stepsisters, they escaped North Korea before I did, again the second time, and this time they made it to South Korea. And now they told the South Korean government that, oh yeah, there is a I know a person who lives in South Korea disguised as North Korean refugee, and that's her name. And also they gave my name to the South Korean regime as well. Oh yeah, so Charles, we got captured together when we sent back to North Korea, but there is a high chance that he might come to South Korea. So from the international refugee camp in Southeast Asia, I really wanted to go to South Korea, and that, because that's gonna be my life. Like there is nowhere else for me to go. Like Chinese government would deport me back to North Korea, and North Korean regime would kill me, and there is no option for me to stay in China. So I wanted to go to South Korea. So I had an interview with South Korean embassy, and they said, "Oh yeah, we know everything about you. You got caught once, you got deported back, right? And these are the people that you got captured with, right?" It's like, oh yeah, they're naming everybody, right? And they know like everything about me. And eventually they said, "Oh yeah, you can't come to South Korea because your dad is Chinese, and therefore you are quarter Chinese, and Chinese blood does not." South Korea does not accept Chinese people as economic migrants or even refugees, and we will have to send you back to China. And at that point, I'm like, what? Like, like if I go to China now, I'm gonna get captured and I'm gonna get killed, on the spot, because, like there is a level of punishment you would get, right, when you defect North Korea. So let's say that you escape North Korea and go to China, and if you get captured near the border town, like 4 years of prison camp, that's it. Because, oh yeah, you escaped North Korea, you wanted to go to China, okay, cool, 4 years, right? But if you get captured in the deeper inside of China, that suggests that you are moving in China towards somewhere. Where were you going? And if you're found guilty of trying to escape to South Korea, that's a death penalty. That's a death sentence for you right there. And I told that to the South Korean embassy, like, if you send me to China, I'm going to be dead. Like, please kill me here now. Don't send me to China. But they were saying that, oh yeah, I'm sorry, I cannot, like, we'd love to help you, but we cannot change the law. And I was devastated, and I thought about committing suicide, because like, if I'm going to China, I'm gonna be dead, and might as well just take my own life. But somebody in the international refugee camp told me, well, South Korea is not the only option. You can apply for different countries like UK and Japan and America. So that's what I did, and I applied for political asylum to United Nations, and I told them the story, and they were like, "Wow, okay." And then they were like doing the interview like over and over again, because regularly, if you want to come to America as a refugee, it takes at least 2 years to get the first interview in the refugee camp. But for me, it took 2 months. And to come to America, it took 6 months. And to come to America for regular refugees, right? Like a political asylums, it takes at least 3 to 5 years to come to America. But for me, it took 6 months.
So knowing and growing up in North Korea and knowing that America is the primary enemy, like you had said, even more so than South Korea, when did you kind of wrap your brain around maybe America isn't what North Korea says, and when did you think that it might be a good spot for you and it wasn't this exceedingly wicked place?
Yeah, good question. So when I was in North Korea, I used to watch this film called Bad Boys 1. And it's extremely illegal. If you get captured, like, you would get killed. You would go to like a prison camp. And there are people who went to like a prison camp because of watching foreign medias. But like watching Bad Boys 1 and James Bond movies in North Korea, that kind of gave me an idea of like, wait, those are people. They're not wolves, and they don't seem that bad. Because North Korean regime portrays Americans as like wolves, like really, really villainize Americans, right? In the billboards, like you would see everywhere in North Korean streets, like billboards of like Americans and like North Korean soldier killing American soldiers with like, with like bombs and whatnot. And like watching that movie, it gave me an idea of like, wait, are those like really bad guys, or are those good people, right? And whenever I'm watching those kind of movies, like I also pay really close attention to like the environments, like what's the side characters, like what's the cities like, what do they eat, like what kind of clothes are they wearing, like what kind of car they drive, right? And North Korean regime is trying to like tell us that, oh yeah, the foreign media you watch are designed to brainwash you. Like the evil American regime is trying to brainwash you in a way to to think that, oh, America is good and North Korea is bad, but no, like that's American propaganda and don't watch it, right? And I'm trying to determine like, but if that can be a setup, right? Like they drive supercars, and they eat like great for like hamburgers, I don't know what, I don't really know what that is, right? But I'm seeing like people eat like a weird, like, like things that looks really good. And eventually when I came to Thailand, like, cause I had this idea of like, oh yeah, I don't think Americans are so bad, because watching those movies kind of gave me an idea of like, oh, maybe not all that bad. And when I came to Thailand, and when I was talking to like talking with the United Nation, they're all white people,
Yeah.
right? And they're Americans, and the way that they spoke, the way that they carried their mannerism, it was just so kind, and like I was surprised, and yeah, no, Americans are good.
I gotta say, Charles, for somebody like where our political process is in America right now, and when I asked you what it was like when you first heard that you were coming to America and your smile was so big, that was a flash of patriotism in me that I haven't experienced in a long time.
Yeah.
And it does, like, talking to you makes you feel grateful to be born here. And
Yeah.
I mean, like even just talking to you for 50 minutes and hearing some of your stories, and it is an unimaginable world. And even in your videos and the other videos that I've seen of you online, and how bright your smile is, and you can see whenever you talk, there's joy behind your eyes. I think it's remarkable, the mindset that you have now, being with what you've been through. It's really incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I mean, I'm grateful. I'm truly grateful that, like, coming to America, I've got a second chance, and I mean more than second chance, like third chance. Like I'm beyond grateful to be in America, and I'm an American citizen now.
Nice.
I have a full-time job, and I got married since then, and yeah, there is so many things that I am grateful for. And one thing that I'm continue to trying to do is raise awareness of what's happening in North Korea. So coming on to your podcast and sharing my story, like I really hope that gives people like idea of what life is like in North Korea. And yeah.
When you first moved to America, could you speak English?
I did not. I did not speak any English, but I was thrown into a high school because I've always wanted to go to school, because when I was in North Korea, my mom got sick around 9, so I had to drop out of the school and nurse my mom. So I didn't get to go to school in North Korea, which I didn't. But when I came to America, like I told my social worker, I want to go to high school. I want to go to school. And because I was 18 at the time, 17 years and like 9 months old. And my social worker put me in high school as a freshman.
So California high schools, I think, are seen as the coolest high schools in the U.S. So
I'd be scared going there.
Even I would be pretty intimidated going to a California high school. And you go straight from North Korea to like a Cali high. What was that like? Yeah.
I mean, it was insane. Like it was, first of all, like the culture shock, right? Like, cause it was like December and January. And when I was in North Korea, it's really cold, right? I mean, you have to wear like, thick padding jackets and everything, but people are just wearing t-shirt and a short, and coming to school. And also like in North Korea, you have to wear uniforms to go to school, but, people just wear whatever they want. And people were just like so big, like they said, oh yeah, these are like 14-year-old kids, but they're just so big and intimidating. Like I could have, like, they have a beard, I was like, wait, what? And also, of course, like I couldn't really speak any English, so I would just sit in the far back of a corner of the classroom, and and even ESL, it was very challenging. And getting going to high school, like not knowing, like I couldn't understand anything, and repeating that over and over again for about 2 years, like I've gotten tired, and I've gotten like, why am I doing this? Like, what's my purpose? Like I don't understand anything, but I'm just keep grinding, and I don't feel like I'm not making any progress, right? So I fell into this kind of deep, I guess, like a life crisis of like a depression, and like, why am I doing this? What's my purpose? Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. But eventually, like I came out of that. Like speaking to people, like when I started like understanding like what people are saying, and when I could actually like get what people were saying, like I was telling them, and I was sharing my story with them, and they were amazed, and sharing my story kind of helped me to, like, in a broken English, right? In a broken English, and or was a Korean mix, like Google translated English back in 2013, 2014. And that really helped me to cope with my like this sort of like crisis that I was in. Yeah.
When did you come to the realization that your story is very unique and that surviving what you did is not likely?
I didn't really realize it until very recently. Well, I guess 2017 wasn't that recent. But one thing that I always try to, tell people is that, yeah, sure, my story is very unique, but it's not uncommon. Like my friends has even crazier stories, and one of my friend who I was with in the refugee camp, he witnessed his father getting murdered by a group of military in North Korea because he stole cow to feed his family. But yeah, like what I've went through as a 15-year-old kid, in life in North Korea, no child should go through that. And and it's a cartel, right? North Korean regime is a cartel where they oppress people and try to hide that from their people. So yeah, I mean, thank you for thinking that my story is very unique, but it is, I think it's unique too, but it's not uncommon. And there are many people, there are in fact 25 million people who my story is as a story now, but there are people who are currently living at this moment who leaves that the story.
You mentioned that Bad Boys 1 was the first foreign film you saw, and you now go as the Fresh Prince of Pyongyang. So I assume you're a Will Smith fan?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Now, my question is, would you get in more trouble in North Korea if you were caught with a Will Smith movie or if you were caught with a Bible? Because I know Christianity is also highly illegal.
Yes, that is a great question. Bible. Like I would, because like watching foreign media, again, as I mentioned, like 4 years of prison time, depending on how many people you've watched with, and depending on how many times you have distributed that CD to your neighbors, right? The punishment goes up according to that. But holding a Bible, they will send you to political prison camp where you're subjected to work for life. You never get out.
Oh, God.
Yeah, so it's very dangerous. And I haven't heard about the Christianity in North Korea, but when I first escaped North Korea, that's when I learned about Christianity. And when I came to America, that's when I heard from South Korean missionaries that there are people in North Korea who are Christians, reading Bible and praising, God. And I was like surprised. And also there is many testimonies of like North Korean refugees coming out and saying like, like there is Bible in North Korea, but the punishment there is severe. Yeah. Because like there is no freedom of religion in North Korea. But interestingly enough, if you go to North Korea as a tourist, they would take you to this a guided tour of like, oh, look at these churches, look at these temples. Like we do have, we do have freedom of religion, right? So they're putting on this facade of like, yes, we do have religion, but no, like there is no religion in North Korea. If you were to get captured with Bible, yeah, then that's a political prison camp.
Yeah, when I was living in China, at one point I was considering doing one of those week trips to North Korea, which you could do through Beijing. But then I heard the story of Otto Warmbier, who was an American college student. And I think he took a poster off the wall of his hotel and was arrested and sent to a labor camp and then eventually returned to the U.S. in a coma.
A tragedy. Yeah.
Yeah. What were your thoughts on that when you heard about it?
Yeah, I was really mad. I was really mad that, like, I mean, personally, right, this is just my personal opinion, but I mean, like, American citizen being tortured in North Korea, that's just, like, why can't we do something about it, right? So it's like, and as a North Korean defector, like, I can feel what he felt. And I mean, like, I grew up with that kind of, like, oppression, right? Like, I grew up with oppression and for Otto, like, he grew up in America, right? And he knows this freedom, and I can't imagine like how he felt, and I can't imagine how. I mean, rest in peace, Otto. But yeah, it was really sad and angry for me.
Yeah. Is there a small subset of people in North Korea, like 1% of the population, that live very well? And
That's right.
Is that only people that work for the government?
That's right. Yeah. So caste system. Are you guys familiar with like the classes? Yeah. So people who get to live in Pyongyang, they're chosen, right? They're chosen people. And not anybody can live in Pyongyang. And people who live in Pyongyang, which is like, think about 1%. So there are 25 million North Korean people. And in Pyongyang, that's 1% of the people that lives in Pyongyang. And they live actually better than the middle-class Americans. Yeah. And they know what's happening, around the world. And they know, North Korea is not the greatest world in the whole country. But they choose not to, speak up, or they choose not to defect because they can live their life, better. They can live their life like, I don't care. I have money. I get all the credits. I get treated well. So what's the reason for me to escape?
Yeah. What do you think the future holds for North Korea? You see some articles in the news that Kim Jong-un might not be in the best health. I read one headline that said he had a limp from eating too much Gouda cheese.
Yeah,
I think, he had a cheese limp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously he doesn't plan on giving up power anytime soon. So do you think he'll just end up passing on the regime to his kids?
Yeah, that's a great question. And of course, it's my personal opinion, and I haven't done thorough researching on it, but I think Kim Jong-un deploying military units to, Ukraine, like approximately 18,000 now.
Yeah.
He's burning bridges as he's crossing it. And on top of that, yes, he has like a health crisis, right? But if and when, like, Kim Jong-un dies, I feel like his sister would come up as the next in power. And I think that the only way the North Korean people can be liberated is North Korean regime collapsing, like, coup d'etat, like that happened in like other countries, other dictatorship countries. Yeah, and that's I think that's the only way. I don't think there is going to be like this peace reunification. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that history has really shown what you're saying is correct, and that's the reason why Kim keeps such a stronghold on his generals, where, I mean, there's been countless stories where if he feels like that there's somebody who doesn't respect him enough, even a high-level general, that they'll take him out to the middle of a field, tie him to a pole, and have artillery strikes like go in.
Yeah.
And make a
or like
big
an
example.
anti-aircraft gun or
Yeah,
something.
like they...
Yeah, and that's what he did to his uncle, right?
Yeah.
That's what he did to his uncle, and he fed his uncle's remainings to the dogs. I mean, like
That's what I heard.
that. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it's very. Yeah, I was speechless like when I actually heard that. So it was kind of like, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, I think reunification would be such a hard process because I've been to South Korea and it honestly now feels more modern than the US. And then you have North Korea that hasn't really developed at all for the last 100 years, 50 years, whenever the Korean War was.
Right.
Do you think that's still a possibility, say 25, 30 years down the line, that it could happen?
Like I've mentioned earlier, as a North Korean defector coming to America, it seems like, jumping into a time machine and just fast forwarding like 100 years into a future, right? Where there's like everything, people are educated, like computer, internet and everything. But North Korean people are not aware of that as much. And I'm sure like the North Korean regime, like when they willingly open up, that means that Kim's family, like North Korean people will come out, right, and learn about the regime's atrocity. And if they learn, what North Korean regime has done in the past, they will be stoned. and there are 25 million North Korean people, and one stone each, that's 25 million stones. It's like, and North Korean regime will not willingly do that, right? And in 30 years, I feel like if North Korean regime still exists within 30 years, it's gonna be the same story. No matter who is in power, right? No matter who is in power, if North Korean regime exists, I feel like it's gonna be the same story, and we need to do something about it.
Have you heard anything about crystal meth smuggling in North Korea? Because I've heard that's actually become a big business there, either as a way to make money on the black market, or, I don't know, I've even heard about the government doing it as a way to make money for the regime.
That's right. Yeah, that's a great question. So North Korea actually manufactures. I know I don't know the English word for it, but I know the Chinese word. It's called bingdu, or it's called ice. Is that crystal meth? Okay,
Methamphetamines. Yep.
Okay.
Ice.
North Korea makes that, and North Korea exports that to China and to some other countries. Yeah, and that's also one of the I guess like the side effects. Like North Korean defectors, like some of them have tried it before, and some of them actually got addicted to it. I mean, like that's what I've heard, but I'm not sure if that's like true. But some population of North Korean defectors in South Korea are still struggling with those kind of addictions, and yeah, I'm not sure how true that is, but that's what I've heard. And yes, North Korean government and North Korean people actually makes that to make money. Mm-hmm.
Is there any organizations we have listeners that oftentimes can be very generous? Is there any organizations that you recommend, like charity organizations that could help people like you and people like your story?
Yeah, I 100% recommend UNICEF because UNICEF actually took me in and rescued me. So UNICEF is a great organization that works with children, refugee children around the world, and that would be amazing. Yeah, if you guys can check out the UNICEF.
Okay. I think my last question is just, when you were living in North Korea, did you hear people speak ill of the government at all?
No, never.
Okay.
Like even amongst like closest friends, right? We do like talk crap about the local regime because like, because all the things that we see on TV, like, Kim Jong-il is sleeping 2 hours a day, eating 1 meal a day, driving around the country, trying to make, North Korean people's lives better, right? And that's kind of like documentaries, like playing every single day, every minute of our lives. And I can see that Kim Jong-il is working really hard, but why are we still suffering, right? Why are we still hungry? Oh, wait a minute. It's our local government that does not share what like our struggles with Kim Jong Il, right?
Yeah.
If he knows what we're going through, I am sure that he will do something about it, right?
Yeah.
So
You see a photo of him, though. It's very clear he's not only having one meal a day.
many meals a day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can't say bad things about Kim's family. I mean, like damaging a newspaper that has Kim Il Sung or Kim Jong Il's face on it, that would get you into prison. Yes, and that in itself is a crime, so which you can't do. And speaking and whenever you're saying like Kim Il Sung's name or Kim Jong Il's name, you have to append dear leader or great leader, right? And that was like one of the most hardest thing that I could not do is saying Kim Jong Il, right, or Kim Il Sung. Like I always just say 수령님 or 장군님, right? It's a great leader, dear leader.
Yeah.
And it was just so weird, saying without like that kind of things. But yeah, nobody can say bad things about it. And even if you do, like, and I heard that, when I came to, Southeast Asia along with other North Korean defectors, like we would talk amongst ourselves. And I heard that there was like coups are happening like in certain cities, but North Korean government would just come in and just kill them all. And the news don't travel that far, so we don't know about it, even though it happened, right? And like to extend a little bit more, I'm sure like North Korean people knows, like if not the top 1%, but the regular people in North Korea, like they know what's happening in North Korea, but they're afraid to speak up because of their 3 generational punishment.
Yeah.
Right. So my personal opinion is that if we put enough pressure into North Korea, like put on more sanctions and, don't allow China to send in, aid to North Korea, stop all of, like get rid of embassies in like all the countries, right? Because that's where they make the most money, like weapon trading, drug trading, and human trafficking, right? And get rid of that and just cut off like all the resources that is going into North Korea. That creates like tensions within the regime. And hopefully like North Korean people, they're smart, they're capable. They will figure out how to live, right? And even if we send in aid to North Korea and help to North Korea, it does not go to people. It goes directly to the North Korean military, right? So there is no need for us to send in those kind of help. North Korean people will survive. And if we create those kind of enough tensions, like North Korean regime will collapse and people will, thrive.
Do you think the first thing that popped into my mind, I've read a bunch of books on North Korea, and one was just a few weeks ago called The Orphan Master's Son. And it talked about how different military units would do like these grabs for South Korea, like that they would go into South Korea and grab somebody from the beach and bring them back to North Korea in order to have intense interrogations and things like that. And the military members, once they'd seen South Korea and some of the things that were happening, the building, the quality of life, that's how some discord would start to happen as well. Bringing 18,000 North Korean soldiers to a different country, albeit a war-torn one, they're definitely going to see, all 18,000 are going to see things that they wouldn't have in North Korea. Do you think that could be an unintended consequence, that 18,000 North Koreans are going to see what other countries are look like, even in a war-torn area like Ukraine?
Yeah. That's a great question. And yeah, military in North Korea, the condition is horrible.
Right.
It's horrible. Like, like people, like the privates, they get beat up all the time. They don't get fed that well. And there was a like inside joke amongst like North Koreans in North Korea. If the war breaks out, 90% of the military will return fire to their own, like, the government, because like how bad it is, right? And deploying 18,000, like I am sure those guys are handpicked, right, by the regime, like the most loyal and people who have a lot of ties back in North Korea to make sure to combat like like them from escaping North Korea. But I have no doubt that there's gonna be more than 18, because already, like, from 3,000, when they initially deployed 3,000 North Korean soldiers to Ukraine, 18 of them actually defected, right? So I have no doubt that a lot of them will actually escape. Seeing like the life outside of North Korea and seeing this, the freedom outside of North Korea. Yeah.
Some of my favorite South Korean foods, or just Korean foods, are kimchi pancakes, pork belly, bulgogi.
Yeah.
Did you not really eat any of those foods until you had moved to America?
Yeah. Well, I mean, food in North Korea, like meat, for example, right? It's such a luxury. So you cannot afford to eat it every day. It's once in a year when we're celebrating like the Kim Il Sung and Kim Jong Il's birthday, which is like nationally celebrated holidays in North Korea. And I mean, kimchi is pretty popular in North Korea because like that's it's vegetables and it's a side dish. But yeah, white rice and meat, that's really hard to come by. Even in like birthdays, like if we have tofu soup and white rice, like that's like birthday well celebrated. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, but I eat that every day now. I eat samgyeopsal and pork bellies and octopus.
Your hair looks good. Your shirt looks good. You're doing it up. Smile looks great. Charles, I can't tell you how thankful we are for you to sit down with us and spend an hour or so with us and telling us your story. You're a remarkable man, and we appreciate your time.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was my pleasure. And yeah, if you have any other questions, please let me know.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Charles.
No problem.
Before me and Donnie get our deep dive on in North Korea, we want to tell you about our good friends at Nutrifoil. The holiday season is approaching, bringing joy and excitement. Also, you're going to have longer to-do list, honey-do list. You got endless parties, indulgent treats. You got travel stress. You got seasonal colds. What you might not realize is that all of these things can take a toll on your hair health. Adding Nutrifoil to your daily routine now can help improve your hair health heading into the new year. Nutrifoil is the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement brand. It's trusted by over 1 million people. See thicker, stronger, faster growing hair with less shedding in just 3 to 6 months with Nutrifoil. Thinning hair is different for men and women, so a one-size-fits-all approach to hair doesn't cut it. Nutrifoil has multiple formulas for men and women that are tailored to different life stages, such as postpartum or menopause, and lifestyle factors, such as a plant-based eating lifestyle, so you can get what you need. The dry, cold air of winter can be unforgiving, but your hair doesn't have to suffer. For a limited time, Nutrifoil is offering our listeners $10 off your first month's subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrifoil.com and enter the promo code PIN, P-I-N. Find out why over 4,500 healthcare professionals and stylists recommend Nutrifoil for healthier hair. Nutrifoil.com, spelled Nutrafol.com with the promo code PIN, P-I-N. That's Nutrafoil.com, promo code PIN. Let's get into the discussion, a little bit of a deep dive.
Okay, once again, thank you to Charles Ryu for coming on the pod, the Fresh Prince of Pyongyang. Incredible interview. I mean, I would have him on again. It seems like he's really trying to get into the social media game, so maybe we can help him with that.
Yeah, no doubt. The part that I almost got emotional when he started talking about how thrilled he was to go to America with everything that's happening in our world now, in our country. It was nice to hear that.
Yeah. No, I mean, hey, America is still probably one of the nicest places to live in the world.
Yep.
Yeah. And just like people shit on our legal system, like our healthcare, and it's by no means perfect, but compared to like the majority of countries in the world, it's one of the best.
Yep. All right, let's get into some other facts about North Korea. Anything you want to start with?
I mean, it's a fascinating place. I know me and you were on an episode of Macrodosing talking about North Korea about a year ago. You can check that out. But I mean, there are endless things to talk about when it comes to that place.
Yep.
Right off the bat, I mean, we should talk about current events because
Okay.
very recently, North Korea decided to send troops to fight in the Ukraine war.
Yeah, there's 10,000 currently. Anywhere from 10 to 15,000 is what the Department of Defense believes.
Yeah, and it's crazy because North Korea invests so much into their military. Don't they have like one of the largest militaries on earth?
They do. They're not like, so I guess you could say a good example. I talked to a couple congressmen actually about North Korea because so many people in America are nervous about North Korea and Russia as adversaries. If we went with just the things that we have at formerly Fort Hood, we could beat them just with that firepower. Like they have a couple frontline units that are good, that are specially trained, highly trained, special forces type folks.
Yeah.
But the rest of them are essentially conscripts.
Yeah. But when it comes to the percentage of their like GDP that they spend on the military, it's the highest or one of the highest?
I think we're probably the highest.
Okay. But I mean, at least in America, most people have enough food to eat. Like
True.
North Korea is spending all their money on the military, and meanwhile, their people are starving.
Percentage-wise, as far as population, they're definitely near the top because currently there's 25% of all their males are in the military.
But a crazy thing to think about, now that they've been sent to fight in the Russia-Ukraine war, is this the first time they'll be seeing actual combat since since the Korean War?
Yes, and that's not technically over. The Korean War is still going on. But a funny story about North Korea is that those folks, the fighters, are now experiencing porn for the first time. So they're finding that North Korean soldiers are just beating their dicks all day.
I know, dude. Imagine, because like I don't know how old these guys are. Probably like 18 to 30.
Yeah, and under 30, probably 35 and under, definitely.
Seeing porn for the first time, you're just cranking it. And we asked him on the pod, we're like, what's to stop these guys from just being like, fuck it, I'm going to stay in Russia? Because like even fighting in a war in Russia is better than back in North Korea, no porn, not a lot of food, probably getting beat by their supervisors.
From what I heard about that, whenever they selected the people, they made their family stand behind them as like a warning.
Yeah. And I also learned that, so Russia has agreed to pay every North Korean soldier that fights in Russia, $2,000 a month, which is a lot of money for North Korea. But they say like it's very unlikely that they'll ever see that money. It's probably going straight into the state's coffers.
Yeah, it's essentially like old school college football where all the money went to the head coach.
Yeah. But I guess if they die in combat, like maybe then the government would give like $1,000 to their family.
Yeah, there is big time hero like kind of worship there. You're supposed to only worship the Kims, but there is some hero worship where you get more privileges if somebody loses their life militarily.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm sure $2,000 could really help their families if they die over there. But yeah, the vast majority is just going to go towards Kim Jong-un buying more Hennessy and Gouda cheese. I think those are his two favorite vices.
Maybe more pictures with him with those huge 55-gallon drums full of oil.
Yeah.
The grease.
Yeah, dude, he's a grease monster.
He's a big grease head.
Yeah, I think my favorite headline of all time was, it came out a while ago, but it was, North Korea's Kim Jong-un may be suffering from cheese-induced gout.
Yeah.
Specifically Gouda.
Yep.
Because, I mean, he's just addicted to Swiss cheese. And that addiction probably stemmed, he went to like college in Switzerland.
Yeah.
I think. It probably just had private tutors, but probably had a pretty pampered upbringing.
I mean, going back to North Korea and being one of the only people that can enjoy a little charcuterie would be nice.
Yeah. Cured meats and cheeses.
It'd be a nice little Easter brunch spread.
Yeah. But right now, I guess he's desperately trying to lose weight because he's starting to get a little concerned about his health. I think both his father and his grandfather had cardiovascular problems, and being like 308 pounds, 5'7", it's not great on the heart.
No. Is that what the estimate is for how much he weighs?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess he has gained a lot of weight since he's taken over
Yes.
like as dear leader.
And I don't think you can get Ozempic in North Korea, but I think he's trying to get some from abroad at the moment.
He's got to be, if he can get nuclear weapons, he can probably get.
Yeah.
Well, I guess they don't have nuclear weapons. No, they do.
I think they do now.
They're nuclear power. Yeah.
Yeah. Like as of pretty recently, they finally got nukes.
And that's scary
Very scary.
because they could reach out and touch some of our biggest allies in the region. I mean, obviously South Korea, they could do Japan. They don't have the technology yet to do a long-range ballistic missile to the United States,
Okay.
but they do our Asian allies for sure.
Taiwan probably too. I also think he's trying to lose weight just to like help with his approval rating, even though
Yeah.
everyone is forced to approve of Kim Jong-un. Like when so many of his people don't have enough food and he's 308 pounds, he's like, if I lose some weight, it will like help me. It'll help earn some brownie points with the people.
Yeah, and they do have elections in North Korea, and they are supposed to be private ballot, and the only people that are you're really supposed to vote for is the ruling party. And so if you don't, even though it's a private ballot, somehow they figure out you could go to re-education camps, you can go hard labor, they'll do executions from time to time if it's your second time doing it. They do all kinds of stuff to, even though they have elections, they don't really have elections.
Oh, so if you vote, it's kind of like, do you want to keep Kim Jong-un in power? Yes or no? And if you,
That's all it is.
yeah.
And they'll have like their little provinces or what their districts.
Yeah.
They'll have like voting for leaders, essentially mayors, and it's the same thing. Whoever Kim allows to be in power is going to stay in power.
I do want to talk to you a little bit more about this like new partnership between Russia and North Korea.
Okay.
What do you think's going to come from that? I mean, because historically it's always been like North Korea's biggest ally has been China, and now people are like they're actually cozying up more with Russia than China.
Yeah, there's definitely still some cooperation between China and North Korea, especially the like fuel, like natural gas is a big export in North Korea or import from Russia.
Yeah.
So I think they're economic partners first, but them going to Ukraine is definitely an eye opener for the West.
Yeah.
And I think that it could be something that forces, I mean, we've already seen that it's forced us into different action. President Biden just last week authorized long-range ballistic missiles inside of Russia for the first time.
Yeah. And some people think that's tied to North Korea getting involved in the war.
Yeah, it's kind of like, bitch, if you do something, we'll step up too.
Yeah. And right now, I think they've only sent 10,000, but people are saying that North Korea could eventually send 100,000 troops to Russia.
Which they basically have to. Russia is running out of military-age males to go. They originally got conscripts from prisons, from mental hospitals and things like that, farmers who had no desire to go whatsoever. And if you're in a combat situation and you don't want there, you will die.
And they're also trying to recruit from Central Asia now. I was talking to my Tajikistan tour guide, Jamal, and over COVID, he couldn't get any work as a tour guide. So he moved to Russia for a couple of years and worked there, and he got Russian citizenship while he was there. And he has since moved back to Tajikistan. But a year or two ago, he called me up and he was very concerned that because he has a Russian passport, that they were going to start recruiting from Tajikistan because like their government is allied closely with Russia. And he was like, dude, like you got to get me to the U.S. I actually bought him a flight to the U.S. and tried to help him apply for a tourist visa, but it was not approved.
Yeah, it's a bad situation for sure. There's definitely times where most of the bordering countries that aren't exactly allies with Ukraine, whenever Russian citizens would try to flee and go across the border, they definitely expedited, or not expedited. They
Turned him back?
Yeah, what's that term called when they not exposition either?
Excommunicate?
No. What is it called? Extradition. Yeah.
Oh,
They
extradite.
Yeah, they extradited a bunch of Russians back to that control, and then some of those leaders ended up falling out of windows.
Jeez.
Yeah, we actually talked about it on the rundown a couple weeks ago, where so far there's 64 major leaders inside of Russia who have been assassinated since the war in Ukraine started. A lot of them are CEOs from banks. It's former oligarchs who are against the invasion of Ukraine. They end up being executed in pretty terrible ways, whether it's poisoning, hanging. They'll execute entire families. There's been times where they were found hanged and the family in a hospital, like mother, daughter, son, all stacked up dead in a hospital bed right next to it. And they just report it like it's no big deal.
Yeah, and like the case that I hear about the most is just people falling off of balconies.
Yeah, there's a ton of that.
Yeah, because that's a very clean way to do it. There's like, there you can just be like, oh, he must have fell off the balcony, and they can't really prove it.
At this time, like with how much it's happened, I really think that the window, like falling out of a window, is a big fuck you to the rest of the world. Like, you know exactly what we're doing. Come and stop it.
Yeah. Not a great way to go either.
No, definitely not.
But it is, I mean, it's a good arrangement for Russia and North Korea, because Russia really needs troops. North Korea really needs money and food. And Russia's willing to pay them. I think they're also willing to pay them in food. So they're just sending money and all sorts of like natural resources that North Korea needs in exchange for all these people. Now, many military experts are saying they don't know how much help the North Korean soldiers are going to be, especially there's a big language barrier. But I saw this quote that North Korean soldiers are trained to withstand a high degree of physical pain and psychological torture. So what they lack in combat, they could make up for with what they can tolerate physically and mentally.
I wonder how much that cultural barrier is going to really affect that too. Because they're surely whenever they come in, the North Korean soldiers come in, they're not going to be really put in charge of anything. They're going to be support elements.
Yeah. Yeah, and like the Ukrainian leaders are saying they're just going to be used as cannon fodder. And Russia's like, no, we would never use them as cannon fodder. But who knows, really?
They've already had 20 times the deaths that we did in the War on Terror.
Russia?
Russia, yeah.
Yeah. No, I think it was saying that there's 1,000 casualties a day.
Yeah,
right now in the war.
They're up to about 200,000 that they've lost. We only lost like 7,500 in the entire War on Terror. Yeah,
it's wild. Like there were days like where U.S. lost more troops in like one day in either World War I or World War II than we've lost in like all wars since the Vietnam War or something like that.
Yeah, the Battle of Iwo Jima was one of those.
Oh, yeah? Jeez. Well, on a brighter note, Russia also gifted North Korea some lions and bears.
Sweet.
For their zoo.
Yeah, nice.
Thanks for all the help. Here's some lions and bears. Oh, my.
One of the funniest things I think about North Korea is that with the money that they have, building a fake city is ridiculous.
Is the fake city near the border with South Korea?
Yeah, it's so that people can see it. And most of the time at night, it's the only spot that you can see from space that's lighted in North Korea.
Oh, really? And they put it near the border just to like show South Korea, like, hey, we're doing all right. We have electricity.
Yeah, like everything else is basically a psychological deterrent.
Yeah, that border area is wild. I got to visit it when I was in South Korea for the Winter Olympics. Led to one of the bigger fights with my now wife because when you're at the DMZ, hey, how are you? We're here at the DMZ. It stands for the Demilitarized Zone. There's one area where you can stand that you're technically in North Korea. As you see on my right, or just directly in front of me, that's North Korea. So I posted a photo on Instagram being like, I'm in North Korea, and she saw that and was like, what the fuck? Like, you went to North Korea without telling me? She blocked my phone number, wouldn't talk to me for a few days. And then I had to explain to her, like, no, I didn't actually go into North Korea.
Yeah.
So she was not happy with that. But
was that when Otto was there?
No.
Okay.
I think that was before.
Okay.
Before Otto was there. Or maybe right after. So that could explain why she was so upset. But yeah, at the DMZ, there's all sorts of psychological warfare going on. South Korea will pump K-pop into North Korea, and they'll also just drop pamphlets kind of talking about how much better life is in South Korea to try to convince people to turn against their government. And then North Korea, news came out last year that they were sending poop balloons into South Korea, which is just incredible. Just tying a bunch of poop to a balloon and just sending it over the border. They also recently, on one of the border islands, they've been just playing the most annoying music and blasting it into South Korea. Like they say, they've been playing gunshot screams and eerie laughter. Like that has just been blasted into South Korea's border island, Ganghwa. And they're bombarded nightly with blood-curdling sounds. And it's part of a new campaign by the nuclear-armed North Korea that is driving residents to despair.
Man. I've done training where they do that, but not perpetual, forever. And going back to like the poop bombs and the pamphlets.
Poop balloons.
And same thing with Ukraine and Russia and their war. I think that the Amazon drone has completely changed modern combat. Like, because there's so many videos of a drone that you could get from Amazon that has like a claw on it, like one of those old where you can get like a stuffed animal in. Yeah. They have those, and they can fly it right above Russian tanks and see the open turret and drop it right in there. Jeez. And that's something that you haven't been able to do before. It's less risky for South Korea to get those pamphlets in because they could just fly them from the border and go straight. And some of them have a long range that they could go. Yeah. They basically sacrifice those drones to get them in high population areas.
Okay. And then there are other very heavy duty drones that have been used in this war too, that are like
big time
military grade drones.
Yeah. And it's crazy that a lot of those can be operated from like Georgia in the United States, not country of, but Georgia.
Colorado is a big spot where they operate drones.
Yeah, one of the things that helps out there is the elevation. So they don't have nearly as much interference because they're already so elevated.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's got to be crazy, though, to just like go into a room in Colorado and be like, okay, I just like blew up a village somewhere in the Middle East or something.
Yeah, there was a time, there's a couple reports that some of those people had the worst PTSD because there's high definition cameras. They see the effects right away of what they did.
Yeah. Damn.
Yeah.
Now, those were like the large drone planes, but what are the drones like that are being used in the Russia-Ukraine war?
Mostly like reconnaissance and surveillance.
Okay. But then they have didn't Iran give some drones to Russia or something that they've been using?
Yeah, but it's kind of like when I was in Iraq, we had these things that would go on top of the Humvees, and they were shaped kind of like the mounds or the Rolos, like a little dome.
Yes.
They would be placed on Humvees, and they have frequency jammers. And the only way that you can get around is a super encrypted radio channel. And anything else that relies on radio signals will fall out of the sky. And the reason why we did that, because there were so many IEDs that were triggered by cell phones. So it would be like they would set it off. So anytime we were going, in order to mitigate that risk, they would have the chameleon on, and it would jam all electric frequencies around us.
Shit. I think I got hit with one of those in Turkey. We were trying to fly a drone, and they have really strict anti-drone laws. And we were just trying to grab a shot of this tourist site, these Roman ruins, and then all of a sudden the security guard sees it, and I think he had a gun that can jam radio signals, and the thing just dropped from the sky.
It's pretty sweet.
Yeah,
it's a cool technology.
And luckily I was able to find it. I just had to search around these Roman ruins for a while, and I finally found it.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice little hide and seek.
Yes. It was still in one piece.
Wow.
Yep.
On a brighter note, they love basketball. Huge basketball heads.
Yeah. And I think we mentioned this on macrodosing, Kim Jong-un invented his own rules or something.
I like that. The James Naismith of North Korea.
Yeah. Pretty cool rules.
Peach baskets too.
Yeah. Korean North basketball rules. Yeah, slam dunks are worth 3 points in Korean basketball.
Well, that's because everybody's like 5'8".
Yeah.
If you have those kind of hops, you like D Brown.
Ooh. Yep.
Who else was it? Spud Webb. No, Spud Webb couldn't dunk.
Who are you talking about? Players in the
in
NBA?
the NBA that were short that could dunk.
Oh.
Who was the guy that played for the Hawks?
I think the most famous short guy I know is Muggsy Bogues.
Yeah, 5'3".
Yeah, I don't think he could dunk.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, I named my first dog after Muggsy Bogues. Muggsy.
Huge Muggsy guy.
Yeah. Nate Robinson could dunk, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you shoot a 3-pointer and it's nothing but net, it's worth 4 points.
I like that too.
Yeah,
Precision. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Now, Dennis Rodman, he hasn't made any trips there recently.
No, but he says that he loved it. Every time he goes, he says he liked it.
I mean, of course you're going to love it when Kim Jong-un's just rolling out the red carpet for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, he probably got to stay in like his own palace.
Yeah, and a lot of people were super mad at him here, and rightfully so, because he's actively participating in propaganda.
Yeah, and I think things have gotten even worse since his last trip, so maybe that's why he hasn't been back. I think after the Otto Warmbier situation, they did like just ban all travel from the U.S. for a while, but it recently reopened. So North Korea is back open for foreign tourism. They converted a military base into like a fancy ski resort. So if you're trying to hit the slopes, head to North Korea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A bunch of powder heads over there.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure they get plenty of snow.
Yeah, they have to. So Charles, when he was on, he mentioned the Chosin Reservoir. And that's one of the most famous battles for Marines. I actually have a tattoo on the inside of my arm that has the commander of that.
Okay.
And he's the single most famous Marine. His name is Chesty Puller. He received 5 Navy Crosses, which is one below the Congressional Medal of Honor. And one of the most unbelievable and things that I can't imagine in a war was the Chosin Reservoir. It was so cold and they were so short on supply that they didn't have the ability to even create many fires because there wasn't a whole lot of logs that they could use. Everything was so frozen and the entire place is essentially barren. There's nothing that you could really burn in that area. It was so bad and the hunger was so bad that Marines would set up different type, because we used to have the can type MREs.
Yep.
Where they would shoot those and the pieces they would have to put in their mouth and wait for it to thaw. So it's like -20. You're fighting. You've had so much energy and calories wasted, and then you're freezing cold, and you have to put frozen food in your mouth just to survive.
Yeah.
There's also, if you see some of those old veterans, they would have they only had like gloves that didn't have fingers, so they would have to like cut a spot in their gloves to put a trigger finger. Those fingers would get frostbite. So if you see Korean veterans that are from the Chosin Reservoir, lots have several fingers missing because once that happens, they would cut that finger off and move on to the next one as their trigger finger.
Wow. What was the background of that battle? Was it like towards the beginning of the war? Was it towards the end? Was it a turning point in the war?
As far as I remember, I haven't studied it in a while, but it was one of the beginnings of the withdrawal of American troops there.
Okay. Because there was like, if you watch a map of the progress in that war, it's crazy. Like at first, the South Korean and U.S. troops pretty much had conquered all of the Korean peninsula, and then China just unleashed all of their soldiers to help North Korea. And then we got pushed all the way to the bottom. And then it was like, oh, crap, are we going to lose this war? And then they were able to push all the way back up to the current line that's kind of halfway through the peninsula.
And that reaction, there is like what is it called again? There's a discrepancy and then how you fix that discrepancy. And one of the ways that the lessons learned from the Korean War was that we need to send more people to mountainous regions, cold regions. So now you'll have battalions of Marines that will go over to Norway or Finland in the middle of winter to practice those types of maneuvers because of what happened in the Chosin Reservoir.
Yeah. That's actually something I think about whenever I'm like really cold. I'm like, okay, I need to nut up, because I think about all the wars that have been fought in like sub-zero conditions where you don't have great clothing at all. Like when Napoleon invaded Russia, like they didn't have boots. A lot of them were wearing like paper shoes.
And on foot.
Yeah, and on foot. And I think he just thought the war would be over before the winter came. And then they're just walking from Russia back to France in freezing conditions, wearing these paper little shoes. And like, even when I go snowboarding for the day, like halfway through the day, my feet fucking kill. I have like bad circulation in my toes. I'm like, I got to go back to the lodge, drink like 4 beers and take a break.
And then as soon as you get inside, you have like the pins and needles in your feet. And that's from being outside for a couple hours.
Yeah, and that's like when I'm just trying to have fun. Like I'm on the slopes trying to have fun. These people are in the middle of a war.
There's no artillery falling down on you. There's no gunfire.
Dealing with frostbite. I mean, Hitler was an idiot for trying to invade Russia when he did. He was just so confident. We was probably all meffed out. And like he had won every battle leading up to that. So he was like, this is just going to be another cakewalk. We're going to just run in and take him over in a couple months. But then like once the job was not done and the first snow started falling, like I'm sure a lot of the soldiers were like, we are so fucked right now.
Definitely. And it's odd in that area of the world that it's completely flipped from what happened in Iraq and Afghanistan, where in the wintertime things there calmed down, like in both of those places. And it wasn't super cold. In Afghanistan, it was in the mountains, like in the Korangal Valley and around Marja, it was really cold. But fighting season there was springtime to the end of fall. In Russia and Ukraine, the main fighting time for them has been in the winter, because they feel like it's a big advantage. Both of them feel like it's a big advantage. Mm-hmm. Right now, it's more of an advantage for Ukraine. They've pushed Russia back in the wintertime. And then in the summertime, Russia gains a little bit, and then it happens again. That might be the most wrong I've been about war, is when that started. I told Large when he asked me, what do you see happening in Russia and Ukraine? And that was when 100,000 troops had already died. They had reduced their air power by like 40% already. Their tanks were down like 50%, and they had to really up their manufacturing and factories. I thought it was going to be over within 3 weeks. Here we are 2 years later, 3 years later, whatever it is.
3 years later, it's wild. Yeah, I didn't really think we would see a big European war in our lifetime, but I was wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, and who knows what will happen there. But back to North Korea, I asked Charles during the interview about meth use there. Mm-hmm. And I think it's like when Kim Jong-un's father was in power, there was a time when there was severe famines, and they just needed money to buy food from other countries, and they don't have a ton of exports. So they just like had state-sanctioned crystal meth production. Because there's always a market for crystal meth.
Yeah.
And that's how the government made a lot of their money. But it's also just become commonplace amongst the people in North Korea, too. And to be fair, if you're living in North Korea, meth would not be a bad drug of choice, because it takes away your hunger.
Yep.
And you don't really feel pain.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you don't have food, just a little snort or a little puff of crystal meth will do the trick.
Yeah.
I guess it's like so common over there that sometimes it's given as a gift on birthdays.
I love it.
Yeah, on New Year's. That
happens in Jacksonville though too.
Oh yes, yeah, that does happen in Jacksonville. This is from an article I was reading, and this guy went to North Korea and was interviewing people about meth use. And he says, the woman I spoke with gave it to her 11-year-old daughter to prepare to enroll in an elite high school.
I'm surprised an 11-year-old daughter is in high school or in school in general.
She's just getting ready to apply. I mean, to be fair, everybody in the U.S. gives their kids Adderall for the same reason.
Yeah.
But just straight up meth.
And it is classified as a meth. Like it is. There's methamphetamines inside like Vyvanse.
Yes. No, it's very closely related to meth.
And in fact, if you're on probation, you have to get a letter from a doctor and turn it in for probation so that you don't pop hot on piss tests.
Mm-hmm. But as someone who has done Adderall and meth,
Wait, you've done meth?
Yes, I did meth accidentally in Laos because they were calling it yaba. I actually recently shared the story on Ari Shafir's travel podcast, You Be Trippin'. That will be out by now when this comes out. I think it's dropping on November 25th. So listen to that, and I'm sure we'll talk about it more on an episode down the line. But yeah, insane story. But it felt like taking 15 Adderall or 20 Adderall at the same time.
Did you feel like your heart was going to explode?
Yeah, I felt like my heart was going to explode. Probably didn't eat for 48 hours. Didn't feel pain to the point where I lost my flip-flops after a few hours. So I was just walking around barefoot for 24 hours and didn't notice it at the time. But when I finally came down, the bottoms of my feet were just shredded to pieces. And I didn't even know.
The craziest meth story I've ever heard, and it was a Russian that did it during World War II. And they had, for the same reasons North Korea is doing it now to curb hunger whenever they were fighting in the extreme cold.
Yeah.
One guy accidentally took like 3 doses because he ended up being by himself. He left his entire unit, went and basically massacred an entire village by himself, ended up naked, running through like the ice and snow. He didn't sleep for 5 or 6 days whenever he was out there. It is legitimately one of the craziest stories I've ever heard.
Jeez. Yeah, I mean, I've always said that the only time I would do meth again if I was sent into heavy combat, which I don't really foresee that happening, but who knows?
Yeah, you never know.
Yeah,
if this thing in like the war in Europe gets maybe.
Yeah, if World War III breaks out and we have a draft again, I'm going to have to find a meth guy.
Yeah, we need to get over like 45 real quick.
Oh, because if there's a draft, they don't draft people.
Yeah.
But Russia, I'm sure, has been, they've been forced to like draft people older than 45, you think?
Yeah, for sure. And they have their most dangerous criminals are released from some of their worst prisons if they agree to go fight, which is pretty good. If you have serial killers and shit in there, I could see those turn into really good frontline people.
Yeah, it's kind of like Suicide Squad movie. There's actually a story relating to South Korea that is very similar to the Suicide Squad as well. It was called Unit 684, and it was this elite unit that was trained in South Korea, and their ultimate mission was to assassinate Kim Jong-un or maybe Kim Jong-il. And so they were trained on this island for years, and they were subjected to it was extremely intense training. They didn't have enough to eat. They were beaten by their superiors to the point that they eventually rebelled. And they rebelled, escaped, I think hijacked a bus. Hold up one second. I took some notes, but just got to bring it up. Yeah, so there was a mutiny. Let's see.
I love a good mutiny.
Yeah. So they hijacked a bus to Seoul, and then they eventually got surrounded, and 20 members of the unit were shot or committed suicide with hand grenades.
That's a rough way to go. My God.
Yeah. That's you can only push people so far.
Yeah.
And they did not complete their mission of assassinating Kim Jong-un.
Yeah. That's not the only type of assassinations that they have. They also, anybody that is a dissenter that ends up being a high level of government officials, they have multiple ways that they will execute them. One of those is a firing squad, which I think is pretty common for a lot of countries. In fact, I think one of the states here has gone and gives people the option of a firing squad again, which is pretty cruel and unusual, I think. They also have anti-aircraft guns, which is absolutely insane. So what they'll do with this one and another one where they have they'll do artillery and keep locking in until they actually kill somebody. They will take, in fact, Kim Jong-un took one of his uncles, and he thought that he was trying to overthrow at the beginning and have a coup. They tied him to a telephone pole in the middle, and they just walked in anti-aircraft guns and made all the other generals watch.
All things considered, not a bad way to go, just because it's so fast.
but also terrifying while they're walking it in.
Yeah. Yes. Very terrifying.
They've also used flamethrowers, which I think that would be one of the worst ways that you could possibly go out. Forced labor, obviously, is another one. And then they have starvation or poisoning, which they did to another uncle that was going through, I think it was a Singapore airport, where they had poison. And one of the women, who was an assassin, walked up to him and rubbed the poison on his face, and he later died. Yeah,
either rubbed it or just pricked him with a needle that had the poison on it.
That, yeah.
And she was wearing a LOL shirt. It just said LOL on the shirt. Yeah, that was Kim Jong-un's half-brother.
Okay.
That had left the country. I think was just like chilling out in Singapore. And Kim Jong-un saw him as a threat, as like someone who could replace him down the line. Back to that Unit 6, what was it called? Unit 684. I think it says the reason they revolted was that they felt like they were never going to get the chance to go to North Korea, and that they would just never be allowed to leave the island where they were being trained, and they were in despair. So they were like, fuck it, mutiny.
That is a tough thing for if you are like a fighter, if you're an infantry person or you're training for war, where if you don't get to go, you're sad about it. Like for me, I guess the example is if you guys went to Uganda and you trained the football team and then they never got to play a game.
Which came very close to happening.
Yeah, you always want to be in the game.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I was pissed when it looked like the team they weren't going to make it to Kenya.
Yeah.
And we had already flown to Africa.
Yeah, it's a long flight.
Yes, it's a very long flight.
Another happy note that I want to talk about, their haircuts. Huge haircuts, guys. And it reminds me when you used to go in, did you have Mitchell salons in different places, like Paul Mitchell?
I don't think so. At least I never went to one.
They were in the mall, and it was for rich people. They were like $30 haircuts, which in like the late 80s, early 90s was a lot of money. And you would pick one off the wall, like a haircut that was off the wall, like I want that one. They have that, and they have 28 different styles of haircuts that are available, 18 for women and only 10 for men.
Yeah, and not just that are available. Those are the only ones you can get. So those are the only haircuts that are approved by the state.
Yep.
Yeah, I had to pick a haircut off the wall when I got a trim in the Dominican Republic, and my Spanish isn't great. And so they just had a big chart and just told them what number I wanted. Now, what are these haircuts like? They have to be all pretty similar.
They're very close to the Kims. Like they want everybody to want to worship them and be a part of that culture. And one of the ways that they do that is honoring them via haircut. So a lot of people have basically said that North Korea is essentially like the Yankees and have a really strict grooming process.
And I think like all males have to wear those kind of navy blue sport coats.
Yeah. I do like those. Those are fancy.
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, of all the things that are in North Korea, I think their coats is something that I could get behind.
I just hope they're warm enough.
No, they make bizarre claims. There's a bunch of bizarre claims that they make, like Kim Jong-il. I think he had 10 hole-in-ones on one round of golf. Is a pretty popular one. They also claim that they invented the hamburger, but I think their name for the hamburger is even better than ours, which is double bread with meat.
Double bread with meat. I love
Simple.
that. And like, I know in China, they eat something that's, I don't know if they call it a double bread with meat, but it's similar to a hamburger. And I'm sure it's been around for 1,000 years. But it's not quite a hamburger because the meat's more like shredded. It's not a patty.
Another mind-blowing fact whenever you look at North Korea is because you wouldn't think of them as big sports folks.
Yeah.
They also have the biggest stadium in the world.
That's probably used more for state demonstrations and like rallies celebrating Kim Jong-un and stuff, right?
Exactly. Whenever they have their big military celebration where they bring in their huge trucks with the ballistic missiles on the back and they're trying to have a show of force, that's where they go for that.
Okay. Some more claims about their leaders. I think either Kim Jong-un or Kim Jong-il, they said, has never pooped.
Constipated motherfucker.
Yeah. And they said he was like born on a double rainbow. Like when he came out the womb, just like a double rainbow magically appeared.
Reminds me of the double rainbow guy.
Yes, exactly. Double rainbows are very cool.
They are beautiful, yeah.
You said that like one time they claimed to have won the World Cup.
Yep.
Okay, so that was before they were allowed to watch any of the World Cup. And I remember they finally were like, okay, we're gonna air one of the matches live. It was the first time they ever did it. And I think they got smoked. So I don't think they do that anymore.
They also claim to their people that they get the most gold medals and that Americans get 0.
Oh, shit. Yeah, they aired their first match. I want to know who they played because I think they lost pretty badly. I can't find it right now. Oh, yeah, they also... Well, it also says that North Korea State TV aired South Korea's lopsided World Cup loss to Brazil.
That's got to be taped, right?
Well, that one they were probably like, all right, South Korea is playing Brazil. They're probably going to get their asses kicked. We should show that to the people. That will be great propaganda.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they lost 4-1. All things considered, that's not too bad against Brazil.
No.
4-1.
2-1? 4-1.
Yeah. The authoritarian regime was so proud of its soccer team that it allowed an unprecedented live broadcast back home of Monday's World Cup match against Portugal. And they lost 7-0.
Yep. So in that World Cup, they got their asses kicked, not just by, Brazil 1-2. They lost to Brazil 0-7 against Portugal, and then 0-3 against, or 0-3 and against the Ivory Coast.
That's to be expected, I think.
That's a tough draw, though, Portugal and Brazil.
How is like North Korea though playing in the World Cup? Because China doesn't even qualify for the World Cup most years.
Yeah, I think there is sometimes countries that never get representation, like that one time that Papua New Guinea had the swimmer who had never swam in an Olympic-sized pool in his life.
Oh yeah,
and was placed in there and finished like 30 seconds behind everybody else.
Yeah, every once in a while they'll just let a new country compete.
Like that guy, his only training was at like a motel pool.
Oh, okay.
And he had only known how to swim for 6 months.
Jeez. Papua New Guinea, dude. I mean, Papua New Guinea is an island. I'm like shocked he hadn't just been swimming in the ocean to prepare.
Right.
Yeah. That's like, if you can swim in the ocean, you'll be able to swim in a pool.
But it's dangerous to swim in the ocean if you've only been swimming 6 months.
No.
One of the other things I love about them, and it's one of the biggest power moves I think that they have, is where they have their own calendar, where the first leader, Kim Jong-sung, he started their calendar over in 1912. So instead of 2024 like it is for the rest of the world, it's only year 113 in North Korea.
Because that's 113 years after their original leader was born?
Yep.
Okay. Kim Jong-un's grandfather?
Yep. Kim Il-sung.
Kim Il. If you had to like rank the three leaders they've had, Kim Il, Kim Jong-il, and Kim Jong-un, I think Kim Il is probably the most respectable, I guess.
Yep.
At least at that time, I don't know. He was very patriotic. I don't know. Maybe North Korea wasn't in as bad shape back then. I couldn't tell you, but
yeah, I think he was the first one to really establish nationalism there.
Yes.
And then typically I believe that if you have a secession line for countries like that, typically the second one is going to be the worst and biggest brutal dictator.
Yeah.
Because they're going to see what their father or mother did and really want to add on to that. Mm-hmm. And then you can go down the line and have a less strict type of government. Now, I'm not saying that Kim Jong-un is not a brutal dictator.
Yeah.
But you could see they do have foreign movies are shown to him, at least. They're elite.
that doesn't really make a difference if it's just him watching foreign movies.
They're elite will get like wine from different places, and all of that used to be banned. They wanted everything from North Korea.
Yeah. A lot of people had high hopes for Kim Jong-un. They're like,
Yeah.
he went to school in Switzerland, like he's going to start to open the country up more, but that did not happen.
Because that grip of power is really hard to get rid of if it's your power.
Yes. I think with Kim Il, their first leader, like at least he had to fight for his power and like may have come from very humble beginnings. But then when his son is just born in the lap of luxury, just like is raised with like pretty much the most power of anyone in the country, then that is going to corrupt you.
No doubt about it. And any of those, like if you're essentially a monarchy there, giving up that is difficult. That's why I think what happened with the Japanese princess is so amazing. It's kind of like a fairy tale story where she left the royal family forever, where she couldn't even talk to her mother and father anymore because she fell in love with a commoner.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was in the last like 5 years that happened. She had a marriage. They didn't go to the wedding or anything like that. They only had a ceremony of stripping her of her royal status.
Okay, because even when Harry like left the royal family, like he still was able to reap a lot of benefits from like he wasn't completely excommunicated from the family.
No, he wasn't excommunicated from the family. He was just excommunicated for his titles and things like that.
Okay.
Like he's no longer the Duke of whatever.
Yeah.
He's just Prince Harry, and they even took his security details away.
Oh, okay. So he didn't have the security detail. I think he was still being paid some, you think?
They cut him off from that too.
Oh, okay.
Oh, actually, I believe he requested to be cut off from that because he had booked money. Megan was going to
deal.
Yeah, Megan was going to get back into it. They have their own production company.
Yeah. I don't think things have gone too well with that production company.
And worst case scenario, if they do start getting real low, imagine how much money they would make from OnlyFans.
Yeah. I mean,
Prince Harry fucking.
Everybody has that option. I don't think they'll have to resort to OnlyFans.
but they would probably get more than Bad Barbie.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Even though she makes like $30 million a year doing it.
It is insane how much people make from OnlyFans. I mean, there's times when it's like, should I start an OnlyFans?
Yeah, I'll throw my dick out there.
Well, that's the thing. It's like a lot of these girls that are making tons on OnlyFans, they don't even have to show their tits or show their asshole. They just like they just have to post like slightly more revealing pics than they would show on Instagram.
What do you think the equivalent it is for a guy? Because you have underboob that is taken over. I think a lot of ladies like they're wearing their midriffs where you could see a little bit of underboob. Side boob, I think, was a real rarity whenever we were growing up, but it's more common now. Do you think it would be having a picture with you with maybe everything but the actual head of your dick showing?
Possibly. I mean, we should ask Pat because like Pat has an OnlyFans.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember at one point he shared like a screenshot and he was like one of the top like male earners of that month or something.
That's sick.
Yeah.
Probably why he has a really nice apartment.
Yes, exactly. One experience I had with North Korea when I was living in China is as a sort of soft diplomacy, they opened up North Korean restaurants all over Asia. I don't know if they had any in Europe. And it was just a spot where people living in that country could go experience North Korean cuisine and North Korean culture. And all the staff were North Koreans.
I don't want a big old plate of poop with corn in it.
No. I mean, it was pretty much just South Korean food.
Yeah.
I mean, it was all food that I'm sure North Koreans get to rarely eat, if ever. But they have had cases where they'll send a bunch of attractive North Korean girls to work in these restaurants, and they'll have to live in the restaurant. Like they're never even allowed to leave the premises. And at least once, like 15 of the girls just made a run for it. Left, I think they were in China or maybe in Thailand, and just took off. Don't know if they were ever like caught and forced to return to North Korea.
I'm sure their families were wrecked.
Yeah, but you can't really blame them.
No.
It was an absurd meal though.
Chu-Hi's?
Is that their beer?
No, that's almost like
like
kind of Zima-y, where it's like wine juice that's a little bit carbonated.
yeah. I mean, I would drink those in Japan a lot.
Yep.
Those were great. The grapefruit chuhais, loved them. Sochu is an awesome booze. I'm sure that is drank in North and South Korea.
I think that's what I meant.
Yeah, sochu's not carbonated, but like sometimes people will just put a shot of it in their beer to make the beer a little more alcoholic.
Okay.
It's kind of like a milder tasting vodka, but way better than the baijiu they drink in China. And yeah, I filmed a whole video on that, so I'll throw in some clips. It was an absurd meal. They did a big like dance performance in the middle of it. I think we started a conga line like halfway through the meal, and then everybody would like walk up on a stage, and then you would have to throw a basketball through a little hoop.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I had to, they were like, no cameras allowed. So that was a video where I was just using my video camera shades. I felt, it felt kind of risky. It felt like I was behind enemy lines trying to like sneak out some footage. I wore a wire in there.
You get patted down?
No, I don't think I got patted down.
We talked a little bit about entertainment and how Kim Jong-un is able to watch different types of movies. They have a huge kidnapping network in North Korea too. There's been several times where they have had different groups that will go kidnap different directors or producers for different types of films and then bring them back to North Korea and force them to work and make the movies that they show to the populace.
Yes. I think they kidnapped a pretty famous South Korean actress, and
Yes.
she ended up being in North Korea for like 10 to 20 years and made a bunch of movies.
Yeah, and she was like beloved there but wanted to leave the whole time. She
Yeah.
would go around with one of the Kims the entire time like that she was there. Like if he was going anywhere on a plane, she was there too, because they wanted everything to look really elegant, and the most famous movie star was always there. I think it'd be like the 90s having Bill Clinton travel with Julia Roberts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so who did they kidnap? One of them was abducted in Hong Kong and taken to North Korea. So they kidnapped a famous South Korean filmmaker who was married to a famous actress, and they kidnapped them both and were like, make movies for us.
If you're going to get kidnapped, I'd want to go with my wife too.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't want my wife to get kidnapped. I take that back.
No, but yeah, I guess it would be.
Yeah.
Yeah. The two were instructed by Kim Jong-il to make films for him to gain global recognition for North Korea's film industry. And I think they eventually escaped from North Korean supervision to a U.S. embassy while in Vienna, probably for the premiere of one of their movies.
Do you know what the movie was?
No, I don't.
They made North Korean Godzilla.
They did?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yep. So they kidnapped not just somebody from South Korea from that, but they also from Japan.
Yep. It was called Pulgasari. The film was heavily influenced by the popular Godzilla films at the time. It was about a farmer's uprising in medieval Korea. A little girl pricks her finger while sewing, and the blood falls on a little toy of a monster made out of rice, causing it to come to life as a real monster.
Electric.
Yeah.
And if you want to check that out, you can stream it on Netflix.
Yes. Oh, my God. And then the monster accidentally eats the girl. He explodes and dies.
That's a good plot.
Yeah.
I never knew there was rice monsters.
No. I mean, that's like, I don't know. How do they explain that? At least with Godzilla, they were like, it was all the nuclear testing that like led to, or like the nuclear testing woke up Godzilla.
Yep.
But they would also kidnap just like normal everyday people.
Mm-hmm.
So say if you're a Japanese guy who's a fisher or something, and one day you're just working on the coast, they would have like a boat pull up, throw you on the boat and take you back to North Korea.
Yep. There's a really interesting book. I read about it a couple months ago. It's called The Orphan Master's Son.
I actually read that book, but it was probably 7 years ago.
Fascinating, right?
Yeah. Now, it's not based on a true story, but I think the author did tons of research on
Definitely weaved in facts.
Yeah, on like what life is actually like there. It was a pretty disturbing book.
Very heavy.
A lot of it is about the re-education camps.
Yep.
Which, like, a lot of it feels straight out of 1984, something like that.
Like the poverty level that they talked about when he's trying to escape there, and the levels of punishment, how they're treated on like the boats, what happens to your family. And that was, I mean, it's a great book. I can't recommend it enough.
Yeah. And how just like you're pretty much just like tortured until you fully accept the North Korean regime.
And they can even tell you to completely adapt your reputation. And if you're like a attractive guy that is going to go to these work camps, they'll take you and make you into a movie star. And they'll tell the populace that this is a movie star from South Korea that we kidnapped.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, it's got to be crazy because Pyongyang's probably the only part of the country where you see a lot of cars, you see people living well, and those are just like, it's only people that work for the government.
Yeah, and they have rolling blackouts that you only really have power in most places for 2 to 3 hours a day.
Yeah, some of the least amount of air pollution in the world, probably North Korea and Chad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you have asthma, despite what Lee said, you might want to go to Chad so you could breathe.
Oh,
well,
no.
the dust would be a bitch.
Wait, sorry. I was talking about light pollution.
Oh.
Yeah, I meant no. I'm sure North Korea has a lot of like actual air pollution.
Yeah, because they burn shit.
Yeah, they that's like, I assume they burn coal for most of their energy, or they buy gas from Russia.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have some more facts? I guess on a darker note. So
A darker note in this episode? Jesus Christ.
It's like a personal story. I'm sure many of you have heard what happened to Otto Warmbier. We brought it up during the interview. I was at a bar in Chicago called Richard's, and it's the one bar that you can smoke inside. I was walking home, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to check this place out. Great vibe. I immediately made like 4 friends, and I'm just like, I was mentioning some things about how I lived in China for a while, and one of the guys there was like, oh, it seems like you know a lot about Asia. Did you ever hear the story of Otto Warmbier? And I was like, yeah, I did. I actually, like, when that first happened, I wrote a blog about it for Barstool, and he was like, that was my best friend from home.
Wow.
Which was extremely heavy, and we've hung out a couple times since. Maybe at some point he'll come on the pod, but I mean, that is like, it's very heavy to discuss losing your best friend.
Yeah. And I would totally understand if you didn't, because that's got to be traumatic. Like knowing your childhood friend went through torture.
Yeah. And just like not knowing what happened to him, because no one really knew. He was just like returned in a coma,
right?
Like all of a sudden.
Yep.
And I think like North Korea realized they fucked up. Like, I don't think they were trying to kill him or something, but something happened and they're like, oh no, this is going to cause some problems for us internationally. And they're like, let's just return him to the US. But he didn't last too long afterwards. And I think, when he arrived in the US, like his parents and the guy I met at the bar were the ones that like went to, that were the first ones to see him.
Wow.
Yeah. Very heavy. It really hits home. And that was the story that happened where I was like, I'm not going to North Korea. I don't want to like support the regime in any way.
With stories like that, it's shocking that Americans will still go.
Yeah, I'm sure some will. I mean, they technically said Americans weren't allowed to go for a while, but now that it's reopened, there's always going to be someone who's just trying to check that box.
Sneaking in.
Well, not necessarily sneaking in. I mean, you'd have to be crazy to try sneaking into North Korea, but...
Yeah, I guess our first guest, Sam Goodwin, had gone to North Korea, and he got in by being a hockey coach.
Yeah. Yeah, that's... I would love to talk to him. We'll probably do North Korea part 2 at some point down the line and hear how the hell he ended up coaching hockey in North Korea.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Yep. Well, you want to get into some getting cultured?
Let's do it. All right, Smokes, what do you got for us?
All right, so my first question is the difference between a dictator and a communist.
Okay.
All right, I mean, where do we start? I mean, they're completely different things. So communist means that you are a believer in communism. Do you know what communism is?
I have an idea. I could be wrong. It could be socialism. I think communism is like everyone gets paid similar wages, and you're kind of like told what you can and can't do for a profession.
Yeah, it's kind of like, it comes from the word communal or community. So like all resources of the state are supposed to be shared equally. So I know in Cuba, which is a communist country, I think doctors and taxi drivers are paid the same.
They make the same. Yep.
Really?
Yeah. Now,
There is some higher castes that are in communism too. Like they have like their elites, but a vast majority of the people, probably 95% of people, live under the same kind of umbrella in communism.
yeah.
Like with that, at least in my American brain, that would kind of stir me away from wanting to do something like being a doctor. Like I'd rather just go be a server or taxi driver. Or, is that like a problem that they have?
So I've heard the doctors in Cuba are actually really good because the only people that go into it are the ones that are super passionate about being a doctor. No one's doing it for the money. Now, I will say, like, historically, communism hasn't worked out great in practice. In theory,
It's awesome.
yeah, in theory, it's got some great ideas. But one of the problems with communism is that competition in the U.S., that, like, drives quality, you know?
And breeds innovation.
Yeah. But like in the USSR, where there was no competition between competing companies, there's really no reason to make everything the best that it can be. So like in terms of food, you know, weren't the best food options in the USSR because they're like, we don't need to be competing. Like we're just going to make this type of food. This is what you're going to eat. We're going to make these cars. This is what.
And that's why
drive.
their cuisine fucking sucks in Russia. Maybe the worst culinary scene in the world.
Is it bad?
Terrible.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, I'm not a fan of
Flavorless.
like, what's that soup? Borscht?
Borscht, yeah.
I'm not a fan. They do make a type of dumpling called poleni or whatever. It's like these small little pork or beef dumplings that are tasty. But
So the leader of a communist party isn't a dictator?
It can be. So like a dictator really, it could be in any type of governmental system that you have. It could be all the way from like a king or a monarchy all the way to communism, which is essentially the opposite of a monarchy.
yeah. So for example, Adolf Hitler, he was a dictator, but he was a fascist dictator. Stalin, who was in charge of the USSR, he was a communist dictator. And there's a bunch of different types of dictators. Can you think of another non-communist dictator?
It's Kim Jong-un?
Yeah, that's communist.
He's a communist dictator.
Non-communist dictator. It's tough because that's usually like complete control is that you're dictating to an entire people group or a populace or your country what they're going to do. Like your desire is to put in people who are loyal to you and only you, that will bend to your will and what you want. You do that in every aspect of government, from education to military to even the other bodies that they'll have. Like, for instance, there is a parliament that like North Korea has, but they just do what Kim Jong-un wants to, like the leadership class. So dictator, just think of dictate.
So dictator isn't a form of government. It's like a form of leadership?
It's a person,
Yes.
typically. It'll be a person in the way that that person controls the government.
Oh, okay.
So they'll come in, and if there's any type of uprising, we just talked in an episode of Chad, how Chad had a president for 30 years, and he was in control of every aspect of that government. And when he died, it creates all kinds of unrest because that person controlled so much.
Right.
Another example of a non-communist dictator, Saddam Hussein. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So pretty much the short answer is that communism is a form of government that believes that all the resources of the state should be shared equally, and a dictator is just the leader of a country who controls the entire country.
I guess you
and
could
has
say
absolute power.
I guess you could say the Ayatollah, too.
Yeah, the Ayatollah of Iran. He's a Muslim dictator.
Yeah.
So I guess a better question would be the difference between a fascist and a communist.
Well, a communist dictator is like as far left as you can go, and a fascist dictator is like as far right as you can go. But then they end up having some similarities.
Yeah, the overlap is like the ends of the spectrum come together, almost like a circle.
But you said like communism, it's communal. So like fascist is what, like non-communal at all? It's kind of like every man for himself, or?
It's hard because like fascism has certain tenets. I'll pull it up so I can explain it. It's a great question, Nicky.
I mean, yeah, that's where it gets tough because Nazis called themselves socialists. It was like they were like the National Socialists. And socialism is just kind of like a less extreme version of communism. But I mean, this one.
I hit you with a good curveball.
All right, here's the 14 tenets of fascism. One, that you have a powerful and continuing nationalism. So like in Germany, for instance, Nazi Germany, where they had all kinds of like the Nazi flags, everything is about being German or nothing.
Right.
It's that kind of principle, a disdain of human rights, the identification of enemy as a unifying cause. So you look at a certain type of people, ideologically, ethnically, like sexual orientation, and you have a unifying cause against them.
Okay.
The supremacy of the military, wanting the military to be as absolutely powerful as possible. Rampant sexism, where like the men typically would attack women's rights and things like that. Controlling of the mass media, the obsession with national security, religion and government are intertwined. You have the corporate power that's protected, labor power suppressed, so like the suppression of unions and things like that. A disdain for intellectuals and the arts, an obsession with crime and punishment, rampant cronyism and corruption, and fraudulent elections.
Some of those things you could say about communism, though, too, when they said like control of the media, that will usually happen in a fascist or a communist state.
I think there's a lot of like dictator and fascism have a lot of overlap.
All right, so I just found this little analogy that might help you, Nicky. Under communism, you shoot the farmers, take their cattle, and everyone splits the milk. Under fascism, you put a gun to the farmer's head, force him to hire people to sell milk at a profit, tax it, and use the profit for social safety nets.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. I think that makes sense. But yeah, that's a big question. But yeah, they are, when you hear the word fascist, think far, far right. When you hear the word communist, think far, far left.
Got
And
it.
either one could have a dictator.
Yes. Yep.
Got it. See, I learned something.
Cool.
And then my second question was, so I hear like, again, I've never been there, so I don't know firsthand, but I've had people, like my uncle, he went to France and he's like, oh, like they hate Americans there. So my question is, which countries have you guys been to that are most receptive to Americans, and which ones are most non-receptive to Americans?
I don't think I've ever been in a country right away like that just doesn't like Americans. I've been in areas of Japan that wasn't super pumped about having American military there, and they would scream at us that we were occupiers and things like that, but never anything that was crazy.
So just going by my friends who went abroad, like my friends who were abroad in Spain and France, like those girls weren't very impressed by Americans. They weren't hooking up with a lot of locals or anything like that. And it's not that they disliked Americans, it's just that they're not like, oh my God, an American. Like
Right.
they don't really care. And they're going to be like, these guys might be a little immature or whatever.
And they don't nut over our accents either, like we do the opposite way.
Yeah.
That's true. Well, when I went to London, like my accent, I guess we have an accent, like that stuck out. They're like, oh my God, you're American. And
Yeah.
like, they would just like ask me 1,000 questions.
Yeah.
Where I was like the opposite. I was like, no, I like your accent.
Yeah.
Like, tell me this, that.
Yeah, so in all my travels, I haven't had any super negative experiences where they're like, fuck Americans. But if I had to rank my like top 3 countries that Americans would be very welcome in, it would be Ireland, Australia, and England. I'd say they've like, when you go to Ireland, they enjoy hanging out with Americans, and they get a lot of them. Although one time I did meet an Irish guy, And I was like, oh, my wife is actually Irish, or like, and I was about to explain that like her mom's whole side of the family was born and raised there, and she was like, "Oh, another American who like has an Irish relative. Oh, so cool!" Like, he was like, "I don't fucking care, dude. Every American is Irish."
Right.
But I was trying to say that my wife is like actually Irish. He was like,
No, it's real this time. I promise.
yeah.
Listen to my story.
He didn't give a fuck. But no, I mean, yeah. If you go to Australia, New Zealand, Ireland. Oh, also, my friend who traveled around Latin America said the girls down there loved Americans. Yeah.
Latin America is Colombia?
Yeah, I think Latin can refer to Central and South America.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think he was in Panama at the time, and he was like, man, the girls will get pumped to learn that you're American.
Man, nobody got hooked up with like naming rights like Amerigo Vespucci. Nobody.
Oh, yeah.
Having 2 continents named after you because you wrote a fucking map.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
That's pretty fucking sweet. One country that you would not be received well in is North Korea, just because all of their state propaganda does teach them that the U.S. is the devil. The U.S. wants to kill all North Koreans. They want to wipe it off the map. So if you're just watching that on TV all day, every day, you'd probably be kind of terrified to meet an American.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And like the Ayatollah of Iran, like he says a lot of negative things about the US. I have heard that the local people there are very friendly and they don't really have a problem with Americans, even though their government is probably talking shit all the time.
Yeah, I think it's I imagine it's the same thing here. You know, like if Americans are always taught that North Korea and Iran are bad. But if a North Korean walk into the room, you're like, "Hey, how you doing?" Like it's a normal person, you know. Like government differences is not the people. Like the people are typically the same no matter where you're at on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's fair. I have one bonus question for you.
Oh, love it.
So I've been to London, and I want to keep expanding my horizons. Now, my family is Italian, so Italy's off the board. I'm already going to do that. But like, what's one country that you think I should visit that will like really broaden
I think
my world travel views?
What's your favorite type of food besides Italian? Do you
That's
like
a
Greek?
great question.
You like Greek food?
I love Greek food. I love anything Mediterranean.
I think at beginning stages of travel, doing it in places that you know you're going to have a good time going out to eat is important too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it depends how far you want to travel. Would you be open to flying to Thailand? It's a long ass flight.
That's Japan, right?
No, it's a
not.
country. It's a different country.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Don't clip that. Leave that out.
That's good.
Thailand
Fuck.
is not Japan.
I should know that because they're like, what's the capital of Thailand? Bangkok.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly
Fuck, I
right.
should
Yeah.
know that.
We
Leave
need to
that
drop.
part in.
We need to drop a pin in Bangkok.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Is Thailand a great spot?
Yeah, I mean, the flight would be a little pricey, but once you arrive, it's cheap. The food is cheap. The food's
Super
really good.
American friendly.
Beautiful beaches, and there's just tons of tourists there. So you would make friends right off the bat.
I had a friend
You could
that
party
lived
for
there
super
for like
cheap.
3 months, and she sent me a picture, and like the gas price there was like 40 cents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Cheap gas. I only took buses and short flights when I was traveling around there. But a very easy place to visit would be Colombia. They got some cheap flights down there. I
Flying
enjoyed
to
it,
Bogota.
but no, I flew into Cartagena and then went to Medellin, which was just beautiful. It's this like city in the middle of all these mountains. It's no longer run by the cartels.
Entourage filmed the movie
and
there.
Yeah, and it's like springtime weather year round. But I don't know, Nicky. I think you would get into some trouble.
In
At least-
Colombia, yeah, me
At
too.
least, at
Nose
least
beers down there.
in
Yeah,
Cartagena.
too much nose nachos and booger sugar.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's like the cops there, at least in Cartagena, because there's so many foreign tourists, they're like trying to catch you doing something
So
illegal.
you could pay them.
Yeah. So you can get a bribe. So that might not be the best spot.
God, I'd love to be a cop getting bribes.
Croatia, I would
Love
say
a
that's
good bribe.
Me too. I think they should bring that back.
Bribes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I was trying to find a pancake spot over the weekend, and every place we went to had an hour wait. And I was like, oh, why didn't I just bribe the guy? That may have worked if I slipped him $40.
For sure.
Yeah.
That's $40 for pancakes.
Actually,
Jonesing for a pancake.
I think Biz did try that at one of the places, and they said we don't do that around here.
Wow.
So very moral pancake houses.
Oh
in
yeah, you tried to
Gatlinburg.
get away with that in Chattanooga? Is that where you were?
No, we were in Gatlinburg, Tennessee.
That's right.
Stand up restaurant hosts. All right, Nicky, thanks for coming on.
Yep.
We'd
Thanks
love
for
to have
having
you
me.
back.
Learned a lot today. Thanks, boys.